It's the final week to see how you could win over £65,000 in prizes. You could be our latest Great British Giveaway winner. First of all, we want to give you £60,000 in tax-free cash. Plus, you'll also receive a fine gold bar worth over £5,000.
For a chance to win, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
I think GB News is completely unique in the way that we interact with our viewers.
Our audience aren't afraid to have their say. They want their voices heard now, and they've got a channel where that can happen.
I find more and more as I'm wandering around, people come up to me and they say, we saw you on television. I say, oh yes, on what? On GB News.
Hello, are you the famous Sue? The whole crew hid me here now. We came to celebrate.
It's our job to be the eyes and ears of the viewers.
They are part of the GB News family, and I'm pleased to say it's a very large family.
And if people go to the time and trouble of listening and watching, then we've got to do a good job for them.
Well, I'm here, right in the epicentre of the protest.
Here we go again. You just tuned in. Where have you been?
It is raucous here tonight.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Good evening, good morning, all at once. Live from Washington, D.C., this is GB News with the stories shaping both Britain and America. Well, breaking tonight. The FBI has thwarted an alleged bomb plot on New York's Capitol, with chilling details emerging about what prosecutors call her dream target, President Trump.
She would come back to attack the White House and the president, but only after she bombed the state capitol.
Elsewhere, sun, sea and smugglers. Yes, migrants are seen attacking police trying to stop a boat bound for Britain, while holidaymakers flee as dozens invade a Spanish holidaymakers' beach. Is this Europe's new normal? and a religious reckoning. An anti-Islam march brings chaos to a city with one of America's largest Muslim populations. Has multiculturalism created a dangerous new fault line? Return to sender. 6 years after Harry and Meghan fled Britain for their American dream, they're now coming back. And America's reaction is absolutely savage. Can't go on. Yes, bombshell polling reveals that Londoners want Sir Sadiq Khan to call it quits at the next mayoral election. And no one more than this man.
He's a terrible mayor, and look at the crime you have in London.
Well, I'm Tom Harwood, and this is The Late Show Live. Is that the time? Yes, it's late. This is a show and we're live. Welcome to The Late Show Live. Joining me this evening in Washington is my panel of the Democratic strategist Mally Smith and the political commentator Stephen Kent. And all the way in London, our political commentators Andy Twelves and Charlie Rowley. Thanks all for joining us this very evening, or indeed this morning. Now, let's bring you some major breaking news to start the hour. A woman accused of plotting an ISIS-inspired bombing at the New York State Capitol allegedly considered targeting President Trump at the White House. Yes, federal prosecutors say that 35-year-old Jessica Bowie told an FBI confidential source that, ideally, she would have chosen the White House with the president inside, but admitted that would have been an even harder job. Well, the female suspect, who prosecutors say converted to Islam and adopted the name Aisha Saif, is accused of planning to conceal an explosive inside a food delivery bag before detonating it while state senators were meeting. Well, in messages cited by investigators, she allegedly wrote that she wanted to destroy as much of the Capitol building as possible, kill lawmakers and severely impact the American political system. Prosecutors also allege she praised the September 11th attacks on social media, pledged allegiance to ISIS, conducted reconnaissance around the Capitol, and purchased materials that could be used to construct an explosive device. Well, the Albany FBI Special Agent Craig Tremarley gave his update moments ago.
Miss Bowie swore her allegiance to ISIS through multiple audio recordings in both English and Arabic. She clearly stated her desire to carry out an attack at the New York State Capitol. As referenced in the complaint, quote, "I don't want to take this kind of risk and have it kill, 2 or 3 people? What good is that?" Miss Bowie didn't just want to kill lawmakers, she wanted a complete disruption of our government. And after that, she planned to flee the country and one day come back to, quote, "do more," such as New Year's Eve in Times Square. Even stating she would come back to attack the White House and the president, but only after she bombed the state capitol.
Just the most astonishing story there, and all praise to the FBI for foiling this potential attack before it was too late. Well, let's speak now to the former FBI agent James Hamilton for more on this. James, we just don't know the sheer number of plots that never make it to fruition, but this one seems to have got relatively close.
Yeah, they did a really good job here. She was well on the way. Well, we talk about the attack cycle all the time. She was, already past pre-operational surveillance. She was gathering equipment to then launch. So they did a great job. It's a good case. It's fascinating. But it speaks to, just how kind of sad, and when I'm listening to your playback, how sad it is for her life, frankly. But, I'm glad the Bureau is all over these things, and they're out there and they're watching, and they're being vigilant and being proactive, which was great.
This is, of course, one of the most concerning examples of a severe ISIS terror plot on American soil for quite some time. Does this suggest that the threat level is rising?
I would say that, it's been quiet relatively with regards to ISIS, but they're obviously still in the game. They're still, keenly focused on the U.S. and they're doing a great job, online radicalization, recruiting people, especially American converts like this one. And, that's why the Bureau's out there. That's why we, fund these JTTFs, these Joint Terrorism Task Force, to stay out there, eyeballs everywhere. And if you read the affidavit, it's pretty clear. They use a source. They talk to her online through some different chat rooms that they were aware of, and that's really good proactive police work. And here she is procuring ostensibly equipment to build that bomb. So yeah, it's obviously concerning, and we can. The Bureau certainly has never stopped looking at ISIS. I think people quit talking about it sometimes because we have a short attention span. But yeah, they did a good job.
I mean, she's not exactly hiding really there, even though she is covering her face. It's perhaps one of the most obvious signs. If an American woman immediately starts wearing what looks like a burqa, I mean, that is a surefire sign of some form of severe radicalization. I wonder, James, is this the zeal of a convert? Do we see perhaps more people who convert perhaps later in life becoming more radical than those who have always been with the religion?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think you're nailing it. I think we're going to see more and more of this, converts who want to do something to prove their, allegiance. And, this is certainly a way to do it and take advantage of our freedom, which is, you can dress this way, you can, take photographs. None of this is illegal, but it's the, all of the various, actions that she does, which crosses over into illegality. But yeah, this isn't the first convert American that we've seen, and this won't be the last. Yeah, the Bureau is hyper-focused, by the way, on this very specific area because it's effective. ISIS and others, Al-Qaeda, they do a really good job of, stirring up Americans, getting them to go do, some dirty stuff. And yeah, this is what we do.
Well, do stay with us, James. We're going to now bring in the former New York City Police Chief, John Chell. John, hearing the details of what could have happened in New York is frankly harrowing, not just about the state capitol, this sort of modern-day gunpowder plot of blowing up a meeting of assembled politicians, but the potential attack on New Year's Eve in Times Square. It doesn't bear thinking about.
Well, we had an attack in Times Square a couple of years ago. One of our cops was attacked with a hammer by a terrorist. So it's not something new. But here's the bottom line: we are in a world now where every entity, whether it be large events, Capitol buildings, we have to deal with being at a level 1 at all times. You cannot take anything for granted. Your security apparatus has to be as best you could make it. Your intelligence has to be crystal clear. Communications got to be fluent, because this is not abnormal anymore. We always have to be at that level of security for terrorism. And this is the world we live in.
Some people might be surprised that this is a 35-year-old woman, an American-born 35-year-old woman who converted to Islam who's behind this. Now, that final part of that final clause in that sentence, perhaps not the most surprising bit, but the most surprising bit to many people would be this particular individual doesn't necessarily, before you take into account the burqa, obviously, fit your sort of radical profile. I mean, is there a significant amount of female violence? It seems quite strange.
Well, this day of the people sitting in their homes being radicalized and targeted through social media is the new norm. I mean, look at some of the attacks we had in New York City with young kids who come from a pretty good life. Where are we learning to become radicalized? It's happening in our homes, in people's homes, through social media, being targeted. That's why it's so important at every level. Everyone's got a responsibility here. And from the civilian side, if you see something, say something. As high as the intelligence side, and federal government side, local police departments. But this is, again, you just asked a question. A 35-year-old woman, where did she just come up with this idea to do this and be ISIS inspired? It's happening through social media. It's happening through the internet. And it's happening in their homes.
It is such an important point, John. If you see something, say something. I am always reminded of the horrific bombing that took place at the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, England, when there was a security guard who saw a man with a rucksack looking shifty, an obviously Muslim man with a rucksack looking shifty, and he thought to himself, and the inquiry found this, that if he said something, he might be accused of being racist. Now, I think the greater harm there is not someone accused of being racist. The greater harm is all of the children who were blown up at that conference, and adults indeed. I mean, really, really shocking. Thank you both for joining us. And just before we let you go, James Hamilton, if you could speak to what John just said there about if you see something, say something. Does that really help the FBI?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. I mean, John's dead on. He's correct. And you also nailed it with regards to being scared to say something. You know, when you described the guy as shifty, that's all I heard. Unfortunately, what a lot of people hear is Muslim. You know, we have to go to the behavior. The behavior was shifty. What was it? Backpack at a concert where backpacks aren't allowed. No one else is wearing a backpack. That's where we have to focus. That behavior is concerning. That behavior requires a little bit of, hey, police, look at this. But we can't live in a society where we're afraid to look at this because the person happens to be of a certain religious faith. That is what they like to hide underneath of. Like that's counterinsurgency 101. So yeah, I mean, I think you're nailing it and John's right. See something, say something, but don't be afraid to say something.
Yeah, and let me leave it.
Well, James Hamilton and John Chell, just very, very briefly, if you will.
Yeah, go with your first thought. Your first thought's normally the right thought. Go with it. Don't evade it.
Okay. Well, James Hamilton, John Chell, really, really appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on GB News. With me now is my panel of Democratic strategist Mally Smith, political commentator Stephen Kent, and in London, the political commentators Andy Twelves and Charlie Rowley. Why don't we start in London today? Charlie Rowley, this is a really shocking story, but it just shows how much threat major cities around the world really are under.
Well, hello, good evening, Tom, and hello, the US. But it absolutely is always alarming when you hear these stories that are foiled by people who put on that uniform, or not uniform as it may be if they're acting undercover, and are able to infiltrate these cells to prevent what would have been a horrific attack, not just physically on the building and the people that were there, but on US democracy. And an attack on the US democracy is an attack on all of us, in my view, in the Western world. And it really is, heroic efforts by those individuals who, as I say, put themselves in the position to go and expose those who want to do us harm, because any kind of, wrong move, then, those that are operating in that cell, whether it's an individual in this case, although we don't quite know, I suppose, but if it is a cell that you're trying to penetrate, where there's a larger group of people who are going to plot some kind of attack, they would be able to shut down, move on, and all the evidence and all the intelligence that you want to gather would be lost. So it's a horrific plot that's taken place, but credit to the FBI and the service personnel that have been able to thwart it.
Absolutely. Mally Smith, we are just a couple of weeks away from the 25th anniversary of 9/11, and it's fairly well established now that the intended destination for the fourth plane was the US Capitol. This was the plane that was, of course, taken over by the passengers on board, downed in Pennsylvania instead, saving I don't know how many lives. But it does just show us that we are not outside of that world. Even though 25 years ago is a quarter of a century, these plots still do exist.
Yeah, and it shows you the evolving nature of these threats, because right now, one of the things that is a top threat to U.S. safety when it comes to terrorism are these lone wolf attacks, which this woman was inspired by ISIS, but it's not like this is some major ISIS operation. She just got radicalized on the internet and decided to take it into her own hands to inflict harm on people. That is in some ways less scary than this huge plot by ISIS, but it's more scary because it's much harder to contain, it's much harder to predict. So I think we're lucky that this was caught. And we're also lucky because I've worked with a lot of state legislators, and like North Carolina, for example, there is security there, but it's not security like at the U.S. Capitol. It's not security like at the White House. So it's a softer target, and we're lucky that nothing tragic happened.
Stephen Kent, is this a real concern now that there are so many potential threats that are perhaps not looking at the very highest level of targets, but that one rung below, where they think perhaps they can have similar impact in a much easier way.
Sure. I think it goes without saying that we live in a dangerous world, and online life is a particular threat when it comes to radicalizing individuals all over the political spectrum and with foreign terrorist organizations. I think one of the more notable interest points with this story is, of course, just this white woman from upstate New York engaging in this kind of attack, age 35. I would encourage anyone in your audience to look up the story, The Radicalization of Calla Walsh. This was a 21-year-old, or is a 21-year-old formerly Democratic activist who came from Cambridge, Massachusetts, who attended the funeral for the Ayatollah in Iran. This person used to be involved in Democratic politics and entered the Islamism pipeline, and she now delivers videos online declaring death to the martyrs, death to America, death to Israel. This is a real ecosystem, and I think we have to have tough and honest conversations about different pipelines that we have within the American political world that actually pipe you out to foreign terrorist organizations.
Andy 12, are we too timid about pointing out radicalization when it's staring us in the face?
I don't know. I don't think we are. I think the US and the UK are pretty radically different. Obviously in the US there's a lot better access to things that can kill you. We don't have guns here, for example. So I think, often it's a lot easier to spot terrorism here in the UK because if you've got a gun, you're probably wrong, and the police and the authorities probably can figure out where you've got it from. I don't think we are too timid. I think something I echo what Stephen was just saying there in terms of radical pipelines on both sides of the political spectrum. There's one of the stories we're talking about later, a Republican activist who's now wearing Nazi armbands on an anti-Islam march. I think it goes both ways, and I think certainly the polarisation of politics that we've seen in the last 10 years has given way on both sides to that.
Okay, well, lots more from all of you still to come, but for now, to my panel, thank you very much indeed for that astonishing opening to this programme. Some huge stories tonight, still ahead on The Late Show Live. Yes, 6 years after moaning Meghan and privileged Prince Harry fled Britain for their American dream, they're coming home. And America's reaction has been absolutely savage. Those details very shortly, but first tonight, migrants are seen attacking police trying to stop a boat bound for Britain, while holidaymakers flee as dozens invade a Spanish beach. Is this Europe's new normal? Well, the broadcaster Don Keith will join us. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis, in the car,
in the kitchen,
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it? We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Late Show Live. Yes, as you can see there, an anti-Islam march has brought chaos to a city with one of America's largest Muslim populations. Well, has multiculturalism created a dangerous new fault line? That's coming up very shortly indeed. But first, a GB News alert. New footage released by the Home Office shows that French police officers are being attacked by migrants as they intercept the launch of a boat. Well, the video shows migrants wearing life jackets appearing to throw objects at the police to try to keep them away from their dinghy. Well, the officers then use Parva spray before splashing the inflatable boat or indeed slashing that boat with a knife. Meanwhile, these are the scenes that have emerged from Spain as 60 migrants landed upon a beach, forcing startled tourists, to flee. Joining me now is the host of The Real Beef, Don Keith. Don, these are extraordinary pictures, both of these two different settings. Is this a new normal for Europe? Is this what a holidaymaker on a Mediterranean beach can now come to expect?
Well, I think it is for now, as long as this leadership remains in place in France and Spain. But, you know, it's kind of funny to me because, you know, Spain and France both possess all of the tools necessary to stop this migrant invasion. Much like the UK, they have things like maritime assets, surveillance, and manpower to counter these incursions far more aggressively. But what they really lack is the political will. I mean, it's more important for the leadership to appear virtuous and compassionate than to prevent the destruction of their countries. But, you know, Pedro Sanchez, you know, being the open borders socialist that he is, he took the virtue signaling a step further by letting the third world know Spain's gates are open for business to anyone making the journey when he granted this de facto citizenship to 1 million illegal immigrants through his regularization scheme. I mean, giving them renewable work permits and residency every year for 5 years, at which time they can then apply for permanent residency. I mean, listen, if I were a poor African man living in a thatched hut somewhere along the Serengeti, I'd risk life and limb to make that journey to Spain or France as well, or even the UK. I mean, free housing, free health care, social benefits, cash in my pocket. And I could even leave my wife at home, you know, because the beautiful European women are there for the taking, which is apparently the mentality we're seeing. But I mean, you know, there's really three things that any country who wants to get out of this debacle is going to have to do. I mean, first thing is get rid of all those incentives that I mentioned so that the migrants will no longer be tempted to make the journey. Then second, they have to leave the ECHR that robs you of your sovereignty by dictating who can invade your country and how you have to treat them and whether or not you can expel them. And lastly, and most importantly in my mind, is you have to elect strong, conservative-minded leaders. I mean, you've got some great choices right there in Britain. And if they can never decide to put their nuanced differences aside to save the country, then, you know, you guys will be fine, as will every country that stops playing politics for the good of their nation.
Yeah. No, it is strange to see the centre-right vote so split in Britain when, added together, it's a clear clear electoral victory. Don Keith, I want to ask you, how did America do it? Because there were millions of people coming across the southern border, crossing the Rio Grande, until suddenly they weren't.
Yeah, well, it's like I just told you, the most important of those three things you needed to do was elect strong leadership, and that's what we did. You know, at the height of the peak of immigration under Joe Biden, we had 10,000 illegal immigrants per day coming into our country. And as soon as President Trump took office, within a month or two, it was down to zero. So, like I said, these countries all have the assets and the manpower to do it. All they need is the political will. And President Trump had that political will. That's why we elected him, and that's why we stopped this mass immigration in our borders. And I'm so glad we did. And I just hope the same for you guys and every European country out there would just, it's common sense. Elect leaders who will protect your country. Put your citizens first before foreigners. That's what it's all about.
Well, Don Keith, thanks indeed for joining us and talking through these astonishing stories and indeed looking at these astonishing pictures too. The Real Beef, hosted, of course, by Don Keith. Thanks indeed for joining us. Well, with me now is my panel, the Democratic strategist Mally Smith, the political commentator Stephen Kent, and in London, political commentators Andy Twelves and Charlie Rowley. OK, Mally, let's start with you this time. This is a really, really shocking set of scenes. Do you think that the Democrats got it wrong in America during the Biden presidency?
I think the Democrats were certainly too slow to addressing undocumented immigrants coming across the southern border. Look, I think there was a lot of things President Biden did well, but it was clearly a policy failure to not secure the border earlier. And I think that is a success President Trump has had. I would say, though, where President Trump gets it wrong is the fact that after securing the border, what do we do with undocumented immigrants who are in the country now? And I think it's twofold. You deport violent criminals, rapists, anyone who makes the community not safe, and folks who have got here very, very recently. But for folks who've lived here for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, I think there should be a pathway to citizenship. The only president who's had broad popular support on their immigration policies, because as much as the Real Beef with Don Keith, or whatever his name was, wants to tout Trump's immigration policies, he's underwater now on immigration because of everything that's gone on with ICE. The only president who has had consistent support on immigration is Obama, because he threaded that needle of saying we should have a secure border, but we should also add a pathway to citizenship for those who are here
Barack
illegally.
Obama had a pretty aggressive deportation regime going on. He was also very quiet about the work that he did on immigration enforcement. One of the things that I think Mally is too polite in criticizing Democrats about, but is true of the American population, is that they do not want to see open borders, strangers flowing into communities from foreign lands that are undocumented, have no background, did not go through the process. But then also, they don't want to see doors being kicked down, families being torn apart. But that is, of course, what the media wants to portray when you do immigration enforcement. They don't have the stomach for hardline immigration enforcement. You have to do things quietly, professionally, and behind the scenes. And the past Trump administration strategy of being big and loud as possible might have been good for shoring up support amongst Republicans, but not good with the average American.
Frankly, it's not just in America. We do see these scenes occasionally pop up on social media of British immigration enforcement under Conservative and Labour governments. And yes, it is brutal when people have to be removed from their homes against their will. There is force involved. Mally Smith, I want to press you on this question of an amnesty, because a pathway to citizenship is exactly what Spain offered. Many people, up to 1 million people, who were in that country illegally. And we are now seeing many boatloads of more people arriving in Spain. How do you do something like that without creating a pull effect?
Well, it's a good question, and I am not an immigration policy expert, but I would say this: the people who I think should be granted a pathway to citizenship are not necessarily the folks who've gotten here in the last year or 2 years. They're folks who I went to school with in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, who I know are undocumented immigrants because their parents brought them here as children, and they don't speak, or they've never really been to their home country, and the United States is their home. So I think you start with those.
But Mally,
and then
your
you have to
party has been pushing this for over 2 decades. This line, we grew up on this movement of the Gang of 8, and we were going to have immigration bipartisan agreement and an amnesty deal for the Dreamers. But yet we still got your Democratic Party of an uncontrolled border and an inability to say that it was bad, because you want so badly to do the amnesty deal. When that is not possible in Congress, you'll accept the open borders. Well, you'll turn your head the other way.
Very quickly, Mally, and then we'll turn to London.
Well, the deal, the Gang of 8, was pushed by President Obama, and it was killed by Republican intransigents on the Hill. And I 100% agree with you.
Politics is complicated.
I'm 100% agree with you that I think Democrats need to be stronger on the border, and most Democrats I've seen have accepted that President Trump got that part right. Where Americans have turned against them is the ICE enforcement and the question of what we do for folks who have been in the country for a really long time.
We're going to pause it in Washington, D.C. for the moment. We're going to pause it in Washington, D.C. for the moment because we're going to head to London. Andy 12s, it wasn't just those pictures on the Spanish coastline that we saw, but of course on the northern French coastline too. We did see police officers, or indeed enforcement officers, attempting to stop a boat, but it's something that we don't see all that often.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the scenes that we saw, distressing. I think, these small boat migrants, for, whatever people say about them, have clearly been exploited. They've paid a lot of money to be on that boat, and they see coming to Britain as the only way that they can have a successful life. So I'm not surprised that they would have, some kind of reaction to French police trying to stop them. I think it is worth noting that the French police have started working. Numbers are down almost 40% on this time last year. And, the Smash Their Gang strategy as a long-term strategy is working, despite, we don't very often have these beautiful drone images that we're seeing here. I think just, on an earlier point about being loud on immigration enforcement, one of the things I found most distasteful about the Labour government is when they did this great video at the start of the year where they were parading that they'd done some form of deportation of illegal migrants in the UK, and they were parading about Asian nail ladies. They'd ripped them out of a nail bar and put them on a plane home. I think that kind of communication just doesn't cut it in the UK, because really if there is a villain illegal migrant, I don't really think there is, but if in the mind of the British public there is a villain of the illegal migrants, I don't think Asian bar ladies are the people that are evil.
Andy.
Pardon, sorry?
After the stories that we've seen over the last 2 months of villain after villain after villain, whether it's the illegal migrant who raped an elderly grandfather pensioner, whether it's the illegal migrant who sexually assaulted children, little girls. I mean, there are clearly villains on board these boats. Not all of them, of course not all of them, but there are some indeed, and the problem here is we simply don't know who they are.
I think individuals can be villains, yes, certainly, but I don't think all boat migrants are villains, no. I think certainly those ones that you just listed are, yes, because they've done heinous acts. But I don't think, Asian nail bar ladies being ripped out of their shops and put on planes home is really the reaction that British people are after, and that's what, Shabana Mahmood has pursued over the last year, 18 months.
Yeah. Charlie Rowley, is there a problem here? Because Andy's right. People don't like the imagery of ladies being ripped out of nail bars. But ultimately, you get sky-high approval ratings for controlled immigration. I mean, ultimately, is there cognitive dissonance here, where people want controlled immigration, but they don't like seeing what controlled immigration looks like?
Well, I think the majority of the British public just want fairness. If you come to the country legally, or even if you've come into the country and been able to claim asylum and then been able to integrate into society, we're there to support people. But it's the lack of fairness that I think really rubs people up the wrong way. If you're seemingly able to come into the country illegally, then be put into either hotel accommodation or housing where we can't even house veterans that are sleeping rough in our own country, we seem to have priorities wrong there. If you're fleeing France because you're fed the narrative that the UK offers better benefits than you can get in France, so that's why people even want to come to the UK, even though they've settled or passed 2 or 3 safe countries. If you're then put up, as I say, in that accommodation, given the benefits, the dentist treatment, the doctor's appointments, the seemingly sort of free lifestyle, and then left here or able to challenge when you're asked to leave because you don't have a right to claim to be in the UK, you can challenge that in the courts because of the conversation you were just having a second ago, where you being part of the ECHR means that that as a sovereign nation we're not able to take these decisions on our own, you get into a situation where it seems as though the UK is a brilliant place for anybody to be. And then you go on and commit the crimes that you were talking about. And by the way, you need a pamphlet now to come into the UK to tell you not to attack a woman, don't rape. Well, who knew? It looks as though the UK is just such a soft touch where people obviously want to come and feel that they can just cheat the British public, hard-working Brits that work up every day, pay their taxes, and that's where a lot of the money is going when we should be spending it on public services, on some of the most vulnerable in society, and people that genuinely want to come to the country, who are genuine refugees, should be welcome here. But we've got to get over this state of affairs where people on the left think, well, oh no, everybody coming across in a small boat, they really are an asylum seeker. They're not. Some are economic migrants, they should be deported. They could have gone to Rwanda, a scheme that seems to be resurfaced under this Labour government, which I'm pleased to hear about. So people want to see action, but they also want that sense of fairness.
Well, Charlie, there's a lot there. We will be discussing this more later in the programme, and I'm sure we will get that pamphlet. We spoke a little bit about it last night, but I think it is worth revisiting and looking at just the extraordinary words on there and the vast cultural differences. Thank you again to my entire panel. Let's have a quick look now at some of the other main news stories here in America. Well, Tulsi Gabbard, the former Director of National Intelligence, who left her position earlier this year after her husband was diagnosed with bone cancer, has revealed that he is progressing well. In a post on social media, she said doctors were confident they had been able to cut out all of the cancerous bone and tissue. Elsewhere, the FBI has stopped former US Congressman Eric Swalwell at an airport and seized his electronic devices, while also raiding his home in Washington, D.C. this weekend as part of a federal investigation into sexual misconduct allegations against him. Swalwell, of course, dropped out of California's governor's race, where he was in the lead, and gave up his seat in the House of Representatives. He's also under criminal investigation by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and Los Angeles Sheriff's Department for accusations of rape and sexual assault. Swalwell has denied the allegations, and his attorney has called them fabricated. And finally, still ahead on the Late Show Live.
He's a terrible mayor, and look at the crime you have in London.
Yes, bombshell polling reveals that Londoners want Sir Sadiq Khan to call it quits at the next election. Are Brits listening to one President Trump? But first tonight, an academic who accused the late Cambridge professor Jason Arday of plagiarism has been suspended from his post at a Belgian university. Is this the right move, or is this an overreaction on steroids? This is the Late Show Live only on GB News.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me. What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans? Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account. You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo, every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Yes, it's late, it's a show, and we're live. I'm Tom Harwood, still ahead. Scotland's First Minister, John Swinney, has defended spending more than £45,000 of public money flying himself and a couple of aides in business class to the World Cup. Is it money well spent, and crucially, is it against the rules of the Scottish Government? But first, an academic who accused the late Cambridge professor Jason Arday of plagiarism has been suspended from his post at a Belgian university. Yes, Nathan Confas was among those to question Arday's work. Indeed, he was the initial person who ran Arday's thesis through anti-plagiarism software. And of course, this long plagiarism row then developed prior to Arday's death, sadly on the 14th of August. Well, Confas said that he was under investigation by Ghent University for discriminating against Arday. He's been suspended as a precaution. In a statement regarding Arday's death, its rector Petra de Sutter and vice rector Herwig Reinhardt said that they took recent public statements made by a postdoctoral researcher at Ghent University regarding this matter very seriously and had taken appropriate action. They said the university stood for respect for human dignity and opposes discrimination, hatred and racism. But perhaps more than that, more than this suspension, there is now a call for something called Arday's Law. The Good Law Project, a campaign and lobby group, has been saying there should be a public inquiry. A petition, now running into the many thousands of signatures, is saying that the press should be more regulated to prevent instances like this taking place again. Have we all lost our minds? Well, with me now is my panel of the Democratic strategist, Mally Smith, the political commentator, Stephen Kent, and in London, political commentators Andy Twelves and Charlie Rowley. Well, let's start with you this time, Stephen. This, of course, was a story that ended in tragedy, many tragedies along the way. What I'm most fascinated now with is these calls for press regulation, as if somehow these stories were illegitimate in the first place.
We will elevate someone to a job they were not qualified for. And if you notice that they actually have a fraudulent background, did not do the scholarship or the work in order to achieve that job, and you call it out, we must now crack down on free speech rights and the ability to talk about that issue. Now, it is absolutely the case that media coverage of people who are unstable and also bottoming out personally or professionally is incredibly destabilizing, and it's tough for them. I really, really hate that. Jason Arday is not the only person who has ever found themselves in the public spotlight for their own mistakes and fraudulence. And it is all around a bad situation, but you should reject and fight against this push for censorship and media controls with every breath you have.
Mally, of course, we don't have a First Amendment in the United Kingdom. There are restrictions on what people can say and how they can say it. But ultimately, this further push for press regulation, I mean, it must sound so strange to the American ear.
It's so insane, and I agree pretty much with everything Stephen said. look, is it tragic that he took his life? Yes. But the fact that he was a serial liar and he plagiarized his PhD and there was a host of these issues that the press covered extensively is not the problem. Now, we do live in a culture where people can pile on, especially in social media, and if you're in a bad place and you go online and see all this, I'm sure it could push you to do harmful things. But with that being said, that requires family and friends of whoever this might be happening to reach out and make sure they get the help they need. And I wish we didn't live in a culture where bullying and all this was so prevalent, but it doesn't mean you should restrict free speech. And the UK always does this. Anytime there's these bigger issues, they think that regulating speech is somehow the be-all, end-all, and it's not, and it will not help.
And it's always the BBC people who want it to happen because they are the ones who have the clearest access and permission slip from the government to cover the news. It is always the BBCs that want more restrictions on media in your country.
Andy 12, one of the proposals in this so-called Our Days Law petition would be to cap the number of articles about any particular instance of, I suppose, a pile-on from any particular publication. I mean, this just seems politically unworkable.
Yeah, I think it is actually quite difficult because then you'd have, public interest cases. Well, I don't believe, I objectively think that the Jason Arday was over-reported. I think by some outlets they did take it too far. But then when you've got genuine public interest, like, say, the Prime Minister resigning in scandal or a Minister resigning in scandal or something like that, trying to put a cap on that, I think would be irresponsible, would not be conducive to the public interest. But I think, I don't believe in Leveson 2. I don't really, agree with a Royal Charter or, particular strengthening of the regulator. I think you should have it in-house. I think a lot of the editors that allowed their reporters, allowed their desk editors to take it, I think, a step too far. Reporting on Our Day should hold that responsibility and it should sit in-house. I don't agree with the Good Law Project or what Jolyon's trying to get at.
No. And yet they're incredibly influential people who signed up to Jolyon's petitions, who attended a big rally in London. Indeed, I think there were. It was more than a rally; it was also a sombre occasion. But Charlie Rowley, are people too quick in the United Kingdom to call for censorship in the result of tragedy?
I'm afraid in this case I think they are, and just as you've got a panel before you who have all different kinds of political views and views on social issues as well, I think you've got to sort of be careful what you wish for, because I think if you did have any kind of public inquiry or even try to scratch the surface of trying to publish a workable law, you would find that we are all pretty much in agreement tonight that it wouldn't work. And you've got to be careful what you wish for, because to Stephen's point at the very top, without being or having any kind of emotional attachment to the media side or to Jason Arday, the cold hard facts are that he was a fantasist. He sold his achievements, whether that was in academia, whether that was in charitable causes, and that might have extended to adversity that he'd overcome in life. That was clearly wrong. Were there 188 articles that were published about Jason Arday in a week solely in relation to Jason Arday? I'm afraid it also is the case that they weren't. He was the protagonist at the very start of the situation, which obviously exploded. But the focus of those articles and the thrust of the weight of those articles were questioning Cambridge University and the leadership at Cambridge University, with just reference to Jason Arday.
That's a really important point, Charlie. I'm afraid we have run to the end of this segment, but thank you so much. I'm glad that you were able to make that point right at the end there. And I'm also glad that, frankly, we're all in agreement. But there's too much agreement now. We must move on. Yes, still ahead on The Late Show Live. Debt, baby, debt. America now owes 40 trillion, yes, trillion with a T, dollars in national debt. Can Trump get a grip? What on earth happened to Doge? And has the United States finally maxed out its credit card? But also on the show tonight, return to sender. 6 years after Harry and Meghan fled Britain for their American dream, they're coming back to Britain. And America's reaction is absolutely savage. GB News have an exclusive line to bring you on what might have triggered the return. This is The Late Show Live only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, this is The Late Show Live. Let's delve into some of those main stories on the front of tomorrow's newspapers. Let's start with this from the GB News website. Yes, it's reporting that the broadcaster Jeremy Vine has stepped down as host of the Carers UK Awards. This after disability campaigners accused his daytime programme of fuelling hostility towards benefit claimants because it hosted debates on the level of benefit spending. Well, Vine said his role was chairing welfare debates had made him a controversial choice, but insisted his programmes had always covered unpaid carers sympathetically. Well, let's speak to now my London political commentators, Andy Twelves and Charlie Rowley, because, Charlie, this to me is absurd. Jeremy Vine, as a BBC presenter, does not take positions himself. The criticism is that he hosted debates and therefore somehow, because one panellist said one thing and another said another, fuelled hatred. I mean, it's bonkers.
It absolutely is bonkers. And, you know, I've appeared on Channel 5 that he hosts on daily as well, the Jeremy Vine show there, where you have, again, panellists of different political views. And, you know, when you're talking about welfare, for example, it does come up an awful lot, but usually in particular to, you know, the number of stories that we hear about illegal immigration, you know, illegal migrants coming into the country who then are able to access benefits versus those that actually are in genuine need, which goes back to my point earlier on just about a sense of fairness. But Jeremy Vine is a perfectly brilliant broadcaster, in my view, that is able to host those debates as the chair. He gives you a fair share, a fair crack of the whip to make your case and for it to be rebutted. And then he'll turn to the other panellists that has a deliberately opposing view. So as someone that is in a position to, you know, be part of Carers UK, I think he was a great choice, but obviously I can't quite work out what's happened.
Andy Twelves, is this cancel culture?
I don't know if it's cancel culture. I've worked in PR in the third sector, so I can sort of see where Carers UK would be coming from if they view that someone was not as robust in their defensive positions or rhetoric around people who receive benefits or welfare. I can sort of understand their point, but I think this is, a bit of a silly story. I'm sure that he probably just had a scheduling clash or was offered a better position at another charity, to be honest with you. But I can sort of see where they're coming from if they didn't view his position as an ambassador, as an affiliate of the organisation, as robust enough around theirs. I can sort of get it.
Well, that's all we've got time for, I'm afraid, but lots more still to come. Thank you both for chipping in on that one. GB News, of course, has approached both Jeremy Vine and Carers UK for comment. Now, more coming up on the next hour, including this.
Thank you to our global community for watching and listening to GB News. We're not only the #1 news channel in Britain, we're chosen by you around the world.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me. What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Live from Washington, D.C., this is GB News with the stories shaping both Britain and America. Well, breaking tonight, the FBI has thwarted an alleged bomb plot on New York's Capitol, with chilling details emerging about what prosecutors call the terrorists' dream target. President Trump.
She would come back to attack the White House and the president, but only after she bombed the state capitol.
Sun, sea and smugglers. Migrants are seen attacking police trying to stop a boat bound for Britain. Meanwhile, holidaymakers flee as dozens invade a Spanish beach. Is this Europe's new normal? And it's a religious reckoning. An anti-Islam march brings chaos to a city with one of America's largest Muslim populations. Has multiculturalism created a dangerous new fault line? Return to sender. 6 years after Harry and Meghan fled Britain for their American dream, they're coming back. And America's reaction is absolutely savage. Meanwhile, can't go on. Yes, bombshell polling reveals Londoners want Sir Sadiq Khan, or is that Lord Khan? Sir Sadiq, Lord Khan, who knows, to call it quits at the next election. And no one more than this man.
He's a terrible mayor. And look at the crime you have in London.
George Floyd reckoning. Yes, 6 years after a death that changed America and arguably the world. Elon Musk says Derek Chauvin should never have been convicted for murder. Well, I'm Tom Harwood and this is The Late Show Live. Welcome to The Late Show Live. Joining me this evening in Washington is my panel of the Democratic strategist, Mally Smith, and the political commentator, Stephen Kent. And in London, our political commentators, Andy Twelves and Charlie Rowley. Thanks all for joining us this very evening. Well, now for a GB News alert this hour. Riot police took to the streets of Michigan after an anti-Islam march descended into chaos in one of America's largest Muslim communities. Hundreds flooded the streets of Dearborn as protesters and counter-protesters clashed, leaving 22 people under arrest on charges including disorderly conduct and breach of the peace. Well, swastika flags and Nazi armbands were reportedly spotted in the crowd, whilst the march's organiser accused Muslims of coming to America to steal its wealth. So as political and religious tensions explode in a deeply divided city, has multiculturalism created a dangerous new fault line in America? And is there a concern over the rise of extremist groups on the right as well? Well, this is a really, really concerning story. Joining me is political commentator Fahima Mohammed. Fahima, thanks indeed for joining us this very evening. First of all, your reaction to these clashes, these scenes of violence?
Well, I think in America, it has an extraordinary strong First Amendment protections, and people have constitutional right to criticize any religion. Even if it's deeply offensive, political expression can be protected, including, promoting Nazis. So here, I find that it is quite concerning that even if it is a political message behind this, it was, not just somebody standing up and saying, I disagree with Islamic ideology. The organizers deliberately went into one of America's most prominent Arab American kind of, cities, talking around Islamization, which is, again, it's like not surrendering to Islam and demographic replacement under the banner of Christian crusade marches, while Nazi symbolism was reportedly visible amongst people attending. And I think here we need to also understand that the historical irony is extraordinary, because Dearborn was once led for decades by Mayor Orville Hubbard, and nationally notoriously known for racial segregation. And today we've got Arab Americans have become established citizens, business owners, and elected representatives. And we're hearing another version of an old argument that a minority population is somehow, not properly belonging. So again, I think, it means that this immigration concern and the sort of, debate around multiculturalism that doesn't belong. I think I wouldn't blame Christianity for these protesters either, no more than I would blame sort of and say that they represent Christianity, no more than even ISIS representing Muslims, because again, in a group of Muslims marching into a heavily Christian American town carrying jihadist symbols, talking about conquering Christianity and claiming Christians were going to be replaced, I would condemn that too. So my principle doesn't change accordingly to who is doing it. But I think that, again, the constitutional answer in America may often be to protect even offensive speech. And but protecting someone's legal right to speak doesn't require the rest of society to pretend the ideology behind that speech is reasonable. And free speech protects their rights to make that argument, but it also protects our right to expose it, which is what we need to do here as well.
Completely. I think you make some very, very cogent points there. Do you think that we are in danger of talking up what is a march of, a few dozen people that have come from a country of, 350 million people? I mean, is this really a huge, huge issue, or are these just some oddballs who've gathered together to march to sort of try and provoke, but ultimately, yes, there have been arrests, there hasn't been any serious violence?
Regardless, I think culturally Christianity has enormous influence, and constitutionally Americans of every religion have equal citizenships. And we need to understand that, Muslims are not taking over Dearborn. They're voting, they're running businesses, like I said, and they're winning elections. This, is called democracy, unless we only like democracy when one demographic wins. So again,
is there a problem, though, when there is somehow quite a segregated community? In some senses, America is often described as a melting pot. In fact, Canada defines itself against America's melting pot by calling itself a patchwork of different communities. But America has always said that, however you turn up when you reach Ellis Island or whatever it is, you then become an American, and everyone wears the stars and stripes, and everyone, salutes the same flag or whatever it is. And ultimately, when you have communities that are fairly cut off from the rest of the country, when you have communities that sort of stick together and there is that lack of melting pot integration, is that a problem?
Well, firstly, I wouldn't describe it as a melting pot. And secondly, I wouldn't say that it was a segregation. And even if people do tend to live together in certain communities, it doesn't mean they're not abiding by the laws and they are segregating themselves against anyone else. I think just like in the UK and in America, we do find people coexisting and working together. And it may be where you might have a home next to certain people, but then you go out and you work and you are, integrated and you are actually mixing and there isn't any problems there. I think it's when people sort of feel that they are under threat for whatever reason and they want to cause unnecessary problems when everything is being done legally and under the law itself, especially in the US. People that are living there are American. They are, like you said, considered American. So what is the issue? An American, have sort of also religious freedoms, whether it's the Jews, the Christians, and, the Muslims. But I think, again, we've seen across the globe that when it's one particular group, especially Muslims, there seems to be a rising target of them, no matter what they do, legal or not. It seems to be an issue. And this is not an issue of illegal migration. This is not an issue of, anyone living there unlawfully, illegally. So again, I would question as to why this is coming about in this way. Christianity does not even, coincide with these protests, I would say, especially when we've seen and heard of, people that are there to cause real chaos and damage with regards to even holding up Nazi sort of signals and swastikas and things like that. So it's not just offensive to the Muslims, it's really offensive to the Jews. And how do people see it that way? But we don't really talk about that. We don't really, have those kind of conversations either. Yesterday it was the Black Americans, then it was the Jews, there was periods of Catholics, Irish migrants, Italians, Asians, and other immigrant populations. Today, Muslims can occupy a role of the supposedly unassimilable sort of group that is taking over. That does not mean that every criticism of immigration or Islam is bigotry, but it means that the rhetoric of demographic panic is very long American history.
Is there not a slight difference when it comes to integration when you look at sort of the other groups that you have mentioned, which are not solely religions? I mean, the Jewish people are a people. You can have an atheist Jew. I don't think I've ever heard of an atheist Muslim. I think the word for that is ex-Muslim, because it's a religion rather than something that you're born with. It's something that you follow. You might hold it very, very closely to you, but it is an ideology more than something intrinsic.
I think Islam and Christianity and Judaism are very, very similar, and the scriptures are very similar as well. And I think we need to focus more on that. And I think that there's different versions. It's not a monolith in order to be even Muslim. There are different cultures across the globe which are very different. I also criticize many other Muslims in my sort of area where I'm living in the UK. So there's not about, seeing people as being different. I think that we just want to sort of brand people as one block, and we want to place them as, again, as people that don't integrate. What does that mean? Like I said, they are owning businesses, they are voting, they are standing and, in government. So what is the issue here? What is really that's going on that people can really show as evidence that there is something to be concerned about? Yes, there might be a demographic change, but is it the fault even of people that are coming in, living and, building their families? Maybe it's to do with the families that are not doing that, the demographics that are not doing that as well. And America's built on immigration. It's not even like the UK so much so. It's inviting people to that sort of land of opportunity for all. And once you go there, you're very patriotic and people do accept you, regardless of where you come from. But it seems to be, again, a disturbing thing about America with saying that, to protect sort of speech that, which is quite revolting. That means you're entitled to sort of say certain things. And I think in the UK, we have much stricter rules about public order and hate speech and things like that. Whereas there, it's very different. But again, I think it's an extraordinary sort of double standard with certain groups that are targeted as well.
OK, well, Fahima Mohammed, thank you indeed for joining us at such a late hour over in the UK. Really appreciate your time with us. Let's broaden this out now to my panel of the Democratic strategist Mally Smith, the political commentator Stephen Kent, and in London, political commentators Andy Twelves and Charlie Rowley. Stephen Kent, I saw you through the corner of my eye sort of shaking your head a little bit there at some of the stuff Fahima was saying.
Never.
What did you take issue with?
Well, there's so much in this conversation with this general story in Dearborn that we could dig in on. Whether or not to be distracted by the presence of swastikas and Nazis who crawl out of their hole every couple of years. We've been dealing with neo-Nazis in this country since Nazism began. We talk often in America about when the Nazis marched through Skokie, Illinois, an all-Jewish community of Holocaust survivors in the 1970s, and that was sort of the beginning of the ACLU and the civil liberties protections in this country for really believing that free speech has got to be for everyone, even in the most uncomfortable of situations like that. But, the real issue underpinning what's happening in Dearborn is the issue of the limits of multiculturalism. And you touched on it beautifully in that segment about whether or not this is a melting pot or whether or not it's the patchwork or the salad approach. These are all different ways about thinking about how you become an American. And what is going on in Dearborn is multiculturalism at its worst. It is more of a cultural enclave. There was a story that went viral just last year, the mayor of Dearborn, Mayor Hamoud, where he rebuked Edward Barham, a local resident, his entire life for coming to city council and saying that there should not be streets named after Hamas and Hezbollah known terrorists, that they should not be persecuting Christian prayer in public spaces. And then he tried to read a Bible verse and he was rebuked and said that he did not belong in Dearborn by the mayor. You have to understand that the people who are leading Dearborn at the city council level, they do not want Americans, white Americans, Christian, anyone who is not Muslim, to be there. So they are not engaged in a multicultural project. They are taking over a zip code and they want everyone else out. And that is not what the American way is meant to be.
Mally, we've spent an awful long time, at least in the last 10 minutes, rightly criticising some of those extreme people who marched under horrific banners. Is it time that we also turn our attention to some of the extreme people who have apparently been elected into local government in this town?
Well, look, I think extremism, whether it's Islamic extremism, extremism on the left, extremism on the right, should be called out. I do think there's an element here, though, that we should talk about, which is, first off, this isn't America. This is some, as Stephen said, these Nazis crawling out of their holes. It's 22 people. The person behind this is a guy named Jake Lang. He went here months ago and burned a Quran. He did this in Michigan to cause an uproar, and he did. He's someone who should have his ass be rotting in jail because he was pardoned by President Trump for assaulting people on the January 6th insurrection, assaulting cops with a baseball bat.
He's a troublemaker.
He's a terrible person. But this isn't America. This is just some folks who are trying to get attention, and they know if they go into a town that's about 45 to 50% Muslim and wave their white supremacist banner, they're going to get the attention they want.
Yeah, and Mally, last week, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, Jake Lang was in Dearborn still, and he was basically on a sidewalk, reciting Bible verses and Christian slogans through a megaphone. If you've been into any American town on a Friday night, when there's block parties and downtown events, there's oftentimes evangelists on the corner in America, sometimes holding a cross, sometimes condemning the gays and the homosexuals and all sorts of stuff that you don't really want to hear, but you're allowed to do that with a license on a street corner in public spaces. Well,
you're not allowed to do it in Britain.
Yeah, you're allowed to do that. That's like a staple here.
Yeah.
It's always happening. But Jake Lang, of course, he was doing this, and then he is assaulted. He is assaulted by the people of Dearborn. They're coming at him. They're hitting him, throwing rocks, and the police are trying to protect him and get him into a car. You know what they didn't do? They didn't arrest people who committed assault. That is not what they were doing, because they feel uncomfortable doing that. You are not allowed to assault someone for practicing their free speech rights, even when they are ugly and provocative.
Okay, at this point we're going to turn to London. I'm sorry, Mally, we are short on time on this, but Andy, this is sort of reminiscent, what we were just hearing there from Stephen, of a case that happened outside the Turkish embassy in London when some protester turned up to burn a Quran. I think he was originally Turkish and he was a sort of secular activist. Someone rushed out of that consulate with a knife and attempted to attack him. In the end, they both got charged. Ultimately, we are seeing this the world over, that yes, of course, there will be awful people who try and provoke, although I'm not sure in the case of the London example he was that awful of a person. But certainly in the American example, there were some awful people there. But should we also look at those who are provoked? Is it really blameless to respond to someone trying to wind you up with violence?
I think, in the terms of the London case, I think, I'm quite happy that both of them got charged. I'm not a free speech absolutist. I think if you rush someone with a knife, you should get charged and you should get convicted. I think if you're going out your way to go and burn a Quran outside of a Muslim country embassy, you should get done. I don't think you're going around and harassing people.
Really?
I don't think you should be allowed to do that, to be honest. It's not some kind of form of...
Why don't you think you should be allowed to burn a Quran?
Well, I think if he's doing it outside of a Muslim country's embassy, he's going out of his way to harass people. I just don't think it's conducive to the public good. I don't think you should be allowed to do that. I'm not an absolutist. It was which embassy was it? It was outside of a Muslim country's embassy. He was doing it on purpose to try and get
Turkish.
Turkey. Turkey's a Muslim country.
I think it was
trying to get some clicks on social media. That's all it was.
Islamist policies of the Erdogan regime, I think it was, and he was originally Turkish himself. Is it not a legitimate political protest?
I think burning a Quran outside of an embassy is not particularly a valid form of political protest. No, I don't. I think it's a bad stunt to try and get clicks on social media.
Ultimately, you can think something's a legitimate form of protest or otherwise. There's another question about whether charges from the police should then enter the conversation, and that is a big difference between the United States and the United Kingdom. I mean, to the American ear, it might sound absolutely bizarre that, you know, you're not allowed to read out Bible passages. I think that there was someone who was arrested a few years back for quite vociferously reading out Bible passages that happened to be interpreted by some as homophobic, and the man was arrested. I mean, Charlie Rowley, we are in a bit of a speech quandary in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, we absolutely are, you know, to a point where, you know, the police turn up and knock on your door for a few tweets. You know, that is free speech. You know, there is nothing wrong with that, however incendiary you might find it. But there is a difference between free speech and protecting somebody's right, even if you completely disagree with what they have to say, defending their right to be able to say it, and then the incitement of either hate or provocation, which can, you know, cause either violence or disruption, where the police do have to act. Whether charges are legitimate after that, I don't know. But you'd have to look at each individual case. But broadly, free speech should absolutely prevail. But what I was just going to say,
add something here to that, because he mentioned that it's a free speech quandary. It's not a free speech quandary. It's an immigration quandary. If you replace the people who have different views about what is acceptable or what kind of conduct comports with their religion, you're going to get a change in what people view as acceptable to say. That is just inevitable. And so, I mean, you can go back to the Charlie Hebdo issue, you know, with whether or not you can draw Muhammad. If you switch the people, you're going to switch the belief systems of the country, and you're going to change everything about whether or not people are safe to do things in public.
Stephen Kent. That's absolutely nonsense. It's got nothing to do with them being Muslims. If someone was walking down my high street, whether it was 20, whether it was 200, with Nazi armbands and swastika flags, you can bet I will go out there and I will have a go at them, as would any normal person. I don't think it's a Muslim thing versus a Western thing.
What do you mean it has nothing to do with Muslims? Muslims come from a different part of the world. There are inherent different belief systems.
I mean, you're acting as if Christianity was invented in America or in Britain. They're all Middle Eastern religions, brother. They all come from the same town.
Sorry?
There's nothing Western about Christianity
hang
more
on
than there
here,
is
because
Islam.
Andy, this is a really important point that you raised, because yes, and in centuries past, there were Christians who went out on crusades and slaughtered people of other religions. Indeed, the Jewish faith as well was much more radical. But do you know what? We had a Reformation and then an Enlightenment in Christianity. The Jews had a reform movement through the Victorian era. Islam seems to not yet have quite caught up when it comes to an Enlightenment or a Reform era. It does seem that your median Muslim is more religious, more radical, and more perhaps textually focused, perhaps more evangelical, to coin a phrase.
The general French population believes that homosexuality is acceptable to the tune of 81%, according to Pew Research. You know what the same number is for the Muslim population living in France? It is 18%. In the UK, 66% of people believe homosexuality is acceptable. It's worse, 4% for Muslims living in the UK, according to Pew Research. They've been studying this for 20 years. You cannot pretend that these people are always the same. Now, if you want to integrate and become part of the country of which you've moved to over the course of generations, that's great. You want to come to the UK and become British. That's an entirely different subject from whether or not you were coming there and you are still living the same life as you would have if you were in Pakistan or Afghanistan.
Stephen, one caveat, in the United States, Muslims have a higher percentage of LGBTQ support than evangelical Christians. That's probably because Muslims are more likely to be Democrats, while evangelical Christians are more likely to be Republicans. But in the United States, that is not the case.
There's also one crucial point of context to this, which is, do you believe homosexuality is a sin? There are plenty of Christians. The former leader of the Liberal Democrat Party in Britain, Tim Farron, had a torrid time in the 2017 general election because, as a practicing Christian, he kept being asked the question, do you think homosexual intercourse is a sin? And he does think it's a sin, but his voting record is immaculate on LGBT rights, because his approach is that everyone is a sinner. So he might answer that question in that survey as yes, it's a sin, but still vote in favour of liberalisations on that issue. However, of course, he was turfed out from his position as leader of that party over that scandal, and I don't think any Muslim would have had the same treatment.
Tom, I think you're absolutely right on that example. But just to sort of, come back to what I was saying about the quandary of free speech, I totally agree with what Stephen's saying, because you've got to have certain pillars in society. So to your opening of this whole debate, you talked about the stars and stripes of the US flag. People know what country they're in. They know what they are wanting or should want to be integrating into if they're going to live a life as an American, whether it's a melting pot or whatever you want to describe. In the UK, we don't know what country you're in half the time. We're not proud of flying our flag. In fact, you get sort of, accused of all kinds of being far right if you dare raise, the St George's flag or the Union flag, because people want to talk us down. If you have those boundaries in place of the country, of what you know where you're going, you know what it's about, and you integrate and you actually move, not just physically moving to a country, but if you move in the direction of the liberalisation of that country, if you want to be there, you accept those rules. You open your mind to those views and values. You don't then sort of cut yourself off from the rest of the society and country just because you just want to live there. That's isolation. That's not multiculturalism. That doesn't work.
Okay. I have to say we have gone massively over on this segment, but it has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. I want to thank all of my panel for all of their excellent contributions on this one. Really, really interesting stuff. Let me know your thoughts, in fact. Visit gbnews.com/yoursay, and I promise we're making time to read some of those out for you. Now, still ahead on The Late Show Live.
He's a terrible mayor, and look at the crime you have in London.
Bombshell polling reveals that Londoners want Sir Sadiq Khan to call it quits at the next election. Are Brits listening to President Trump? But also tonight. Scotland's First Minister John Swinney has defended spending more than £45,000 of taxpayers' money flying himself and two aides in business class to the World Cup. Is that money well spent? And crucially, does it break his own rules? Well, this is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. But first, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are expected to return to Britain with their two children later this month, before Archie and Lilibet start school in September. Now, rumours are suggesting it could be somewhere in the Cotswolds, famous holiday destination of J.D. Vance. But for those stateside, that means the long national nightmare is finally over, or at least that's according to the front page of the New York Post today. Well, and back on home soil in Britain, only a fifth back Harry and Meghan moving back to the country, according to the latest YouGov polling today. To add to their troubles, reported in The Times, there are currently no plans to provide the couple with taxpayer-funded armed protection, 9 months after Prince Harry was told a fresh risk assessment would take place. But before any sympathy, the Sussexes lost their automatic police protection when they stepped back as working royals in 2020. They currently employ private security in the US, of course. So why are some of us Brits still a bit bitter? Well, let's remind ourselves about what Harry has said previously.
I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point.
Well, Meghan, for her part, didn't exactly sing our praises since they left either.
I curtsied as though I was like... Pleasure to meet you, Your Majesty.
Strange. Earlier on GB News, Prince Harry's friend, Archie Manners, exclusively told us what he thinks is behind the return.
The King is not a young man and he has cancer. So, I mean, without being too grim about it, he's not going to live forever. None of us are, but I suspect I might live a bit longer than he will. And I suspect, like a lot of these rifts, when it's done over the telephone, or in this case through the national newspapers, it elicits one kind of response. When you look at somebody face to face and have a conversation, things are seen differently, and I suspect that's what has happened here. I am in no doubt that the primary motivator of this move is the King's health.
Well, that's what Archie Manners had to say, friend, of course, of Prince Harry. But with me now is the host of Bianca Across the Nation on Newsmax, Bianca Della Garza. Bianca, thanks indeed for joining us this evening. I mean, a lot of Brits, of course, are thinking about Harry and Meghan and the sort of psychodrama around the royal family. Does it cut across in the United States as well?
Well, OK, so obviously, from my perspective, as someone who's not British, but had the privilege of covering the first royal wedding of Kate and your future king, and seeing the love that was in the air. And I think there were such high hopes initially. And I'm really looking at this as a new chapter, as you just played from Harry's friend. That was a pretty interesting clip, a good riddance article or headline. I, for one, am not wishing any ill will, but you know what? Let's get real. Meghan is insufferable. She needs some serious advice here, woman to woman. She's got to cut it out. She's done enough damage to her husband and the family. She's getting a chance there. The kids are enrolled in school. From what I'm reading, there's major security concerns. She needs to shut her mouth. She's got to realize nothing has worked. Her celebrity, fantasy is kaput. So focus a little bit on being mom and realize the most important thing most of us have is our family and our health. And it can be very fleeting and be gone in a day. So I do hope for reconciliation, but maybe I'm just an ultimate optimist here.
Well, ultimately, this is what I think a lot of people have hope for, but there is obviously this sort of residual fear that frankly, some people think that Prince Harry has betrayed the trust of the royal family with that Oprah interview, with the comments about the speculation over the colour of the skin of the child and whether that was malicious or just intriguing. And ultimately, there has been a lot of bad blood here, an entire book's worth.
I think anything can be repaired. And as I sit here from the United States tonight, it's funny, Donald Trump sat down with somebody who really betrayed him, Michael Cohen. That's not family. And you think of the family and people that have wronged you and your capability and your capacity as a human to evolve, to forgive, to love. I think that is within Harry. And I think that forgiveness is going to be the ultimate sort of redeeming factor. Meghan has really been a very destructive person and force. And like I said, we go back to the hopes that when they got married, that this would be sort of a great, shot for Harry, who obviously wrote that book, The Spare. The Oprah interview was horrific. There's certain things I think you can't forget, but can people forgive? Maybe not her. That's why I'm giving her that piece of advice. That's why I'm saying is she really needs to cut it out. She really needs to understand. I hope she's done a lot of soul searching and growth. But you also remember, she's not very good with her own family, and I think that you look at Harry and, he didn't marry someone who had a very strong family sort of tie, and it bled over. So, he's chosen to be with her. I don't know. I mean, I hope they can make it, but ultimately him moving back potentially to be with his father and have some healing and mending. Great move, Harry. And I think that you all will open your arms and welcome him. And she's just going to have to forge her own path.
I think there is a lot of goodwill actually towards Prince Harry, particularly after his tour of Australia, when we see him doing sort of almost acting with quasi-royal duties, might I tentatively say. You see a bit of the old Harry there, and I think that the British people, Bianca, you are so right, are ready to welcome him back. Whether we see that play out, well, I suppose we'll have to let time tell. But Bianca de la Garza, really good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us, host of Bianca Across the Nation on Newsmax. Thanks. Well, with me now is my panel of the Democratic strategist, Mally Smith, the political commentator, Stephen Kent, and in London, our political commentators, Andy Twelves and Charlie Rowley. Andy, this is ultimately a story that is on the front pages of American papers, a long read in the New York Times, as well as, of course, our papers back in the United Kingdom. Why is there such fascination around this couple?
I could not tell you. I don't care particularly about Meghan Markle or Prince Harry or what the royals are doing. To be completely and brutally honest with you, I think there's this bizarre fascination where a lot of older people have a real familiarity and enjoy, the kind of court gossip of the royal family, and they buy newspapers. To be honest, I think, you see some of these headlines, the way some people talk about Meghan Markle, they treat her harsher than they do like some paedophiles. I think it is absolutely mad the way that people talk about Meghan Markle on the internet. I think it's so out of touch. I think, clearly there's something going on in the family. The King's got cancer. Prince Harry's got, 2 young kids? He probably wants to raise them in England. I think there's a lot of kind of court chatter about this that just really doesn't merit it. To be honest with you, Tom, I'm really sorry, that's not the good answer, but that's my answer.
No. I think it's a really important answer, Andy, because I know that there are a lot of people on both sides of the Atlantic who go, well, why are you talking about this? But ultimately, clearly, there's another, perhaps slightly larger group of people who go, please talk about this. So, Charlie Rowley, I want to bring in this point that Archie Manners raised earlier today, that frankly, the king is mortal. It's not nice to think about, but perhaps that is one of the big drivers here.
Yes, and there's no reason to suggest that wouldn't be the case. They are a father and son at the end of the day, despite the odd way in which they operate, because for a long time they've had obviously different roles, lots of staff around them, living in different sort of palaces. They've all got a press team, they've all got PR people, they've all got events teams around. So they don't operate in
just like any ordinary family.
Just like any ordinary, exactly. They don't operate in exactly the same way, but still, I think also being the death of Princess Diana's 30th anniversary coming up next year for that. There's a lot of things that I think are pulling maybe emotionally on the family that might bring them back together. However, in answer to your direct question, why are we talking about it? I wish we weren't talking about it, but we are talking about it because for so long, since their marriage, Meghan Markle went out of her way, it seems to me, with her people to tarnish and discredit the royal family, that then claimed they wanted to leave because it was unbearable in the UK, to completely sell out the royal family, which I think is amounting to treason, in my view, to then want to say...
That's a strong word, Charlie Rowley.
How dare the press? We've come to America to have peace and quiet. We don't want any media intrusion at all. How terrible the media are. And yet we've just signed $12 million or whatever it was for Netflix series after series. And here's my jams. She can't get a job, and no one takes her seriously in America, so she's failed out there. She didn't get the money or the publicity or the career that she wanted for selling out the royal family. Harry took a back seat in America. He's now obviously got those ties with the UK, where I think they're now sort of, coming back with their tail between their legs. I've no animosity against Harry. I think he's an angry young man that is doing a lot of repair work, and there's still a lot of repair work that needs to be done. Maybe that can happen when they come back in the UK, but I've got no love lost for Meghan Markle.
Well, speaking of traitors, let's turn to my American panel. It was 250 years ago, but I think we've got over it. Stephen, what do you make of this story?
Andy said everything that I think needed to be said on this, and he looks like he's asleep right now on this topic as we go over it. And I forgot that they were here. I forgot that they were here. Whenever this comes up, I never know if I'm allowed to say like the Royals. What? So Andy already did it for me. But we could just take this back to being an immigration story. Like maybe they just weren't fitting in here. They weren't integrating and adopting the American way of life. If they're not going to go home, they should have been deported. It's fine. They can go on home.
Mally, are we going to have far too much agreement on this panel on this issue?
I think so. As an American with Irish heritage, I do not care about your royals. And here's the thing: when the newspaper that said America's long nightmare is over, I can tell you, Americans don't care. I don't think most Americans remember they were here, as Stephen said. I don't think many Americans are going to know that they left back to the UK. All I hope for is that they can handle their drama in-house and not make it news all the time, and that the family can repair themselves, because it's sad when families...
Mally, what's the meme from Mad Men that always gets so much play between America and Europe? It's Europe is the guy in the elevator saying, "I feel sorry for you," and then America's, I don't think about you at
all. Although my favourite one of the memes between the sort of Europeans, Americans, and indeed Chinese, to change the subject completely, but it's my show, I can do what I want, is looking at the amazing Mechazilla arms of Starbase Texas catching Starship's first stage as it comes down, this enormous Elon Musk rocket, right? And then the Chinese, just this week, they've landed for the first time on land their own reusable rocket too. So this one pane, the American amazing rocket, the Chinese catching up in the middle. On the right, what's the image for Europe? One of those stupid bottle caps that you can't fit off the bottle. That's the innovation that we're getting from the European Union, and I think that is just so apposite. It's, what's the phrase? America innovates, China replicates, Europe regulates. Andy 12s, prove me wrong.
Well, I think one thing you don't have in America is a European summer. August is such a great month to be European. No one answers emails. You can just, go to the cafe and smoke all day. And I think that's pretty fantastic. You don't really have that in the States, from what I understand. So really, I will have my European summer quite happily if it means no.
Not me. What does a rich person in America do? They buy 3 boats and 3 cars, and a rich person in Europe smokes 20 cigarettes at a cafe instead of 10.
Now, can I just put on the record, this show does not endorse smoking 20 cigarettes. In fact, I personally endorse having 20 vapes instead. Well, to my panel, thank you very much indeed for talking, well, firstly about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, and then about literally anything else, as is our wont. Well, let's have a quick look at some of the other main news stories here in America. Yes, Tulsi Gabbard, the former Director of National Intelligence who left her position earlier this year after her husband was diagnosed with bone cancer, has revealed that he is progressing well. In a post on social media, she said doctors were confident they'd been able to cut out all of the cancerous bone and tissue. Good news. The FBI, in other news, has stopped former US Congressman Eric Swalwell in an airport, seized his electronic devices while also raiding his home in Washington, D.C. this weekend, all as part of a federal investigation into sexual misconduct allegations against him. Swalwell dropped out of the California governor's race, where he was in the lead, and gave up his seat in the House of Representatives. While he's also under criminal investigation by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and Los Angeles Sheriff's Department for accusations of rape and sexual assault. Swalwell has denied the allegations, and his attorney has called them fabricated. Still ahead on The Late Show Live. 6 years after the death of George Floyd, Elon Musk says policeman Derek Chauvin should never have been convicted of murder. What do you make of that? But also still ahead.
He's a terrible mayor, and look at the crime you have in London.
Bombshell polling reveals Londoners want Sir Sadiq Khan to call it quits at the next election. Are Brits listening to one Donald J. Trump? Well, this is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Another day of heavy downpours for some of us. Not quite as many as we saw through yesterday, a bit more sunshine around, but for all of us it will stay on the cooler side of things with a northerly wind pushing in from the north, and that will bring that fresher feel particularly to more eastern coasts throughout today. We could see some quite heavy downpours pushing across parts of northeastern England for a time this morning and across parts of South Wales as well as the southwest into this afternoon. But for many of us it's going to be a relatively dry day, plenty of sunny spells, not too much in the way of long-lived sunshine, but it will still feel quite warm in the sunshine despite temperatures being a little bit below average for the time of year. Across Scotland, it's going to be quite a dry evening. The risk of showers pushes further south away from Scotland into this evening, so plenty of sunshine to end the day. Still that fresh feel, though, across the very far north, and it will remain cloudier across more northern coasts into the evening as well. The shower risk increases as we head towards parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, parts of Wales, southeastern England, also in with the chance of a shower through Friday evening. Some of these do bring a risk of some quite torrential downpours through Friday evening. But then it does turn drier as we head towards the weekend. A clear night to come for many of us through Friday night into Saturday. Still a chance of a shower overnight across some coastal areas, particularly Irish Sea coast, but for many inland areas it's going to be a cool night. Temperatures widely falling down into single figures, the low single figures rurally to start the day, so quite a fresh start. But it is going to be a sunny start to the weekend. Plenty of dry weather on the cards this weekend and a bit more sunshine than we've had through the past few days. But temperatures will remain on the cooler side of things, quite widely below average in the high teens, possibly low 20s at best. So a bit of a difference to what we've become accustomed to. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, a new poll suggests that a majority of Londoners want Sadiq Khan to stand down as the next mayoral election. Yes, the YouGov survey found an astonishing 56%, an absolute majority, wants him to make way for another Labour candidate in 2028. So, unfortunately for those who are hoping that a different party could control London, no. They still want Labour to control London, just not Sir Sadiq. Just 24% were backing Sir Sadiq to bid for a record fourth term. And there appears to be wider dissatisfaction with the general direction of the capital. Sorry for those struggling to see this late at night. Squinting at your screens, let me read some of these. 76% say affordable housing has got worse in London over the last decade. 58% say the same about crime. 50% say women's safety has got worse. Yes, Sir Sadiq's own record also came under fire. 57% saying he handled crime badly. 2/3 saying he's done a bad job on housing. Overall, 47% saying he's doing badly as mayor, compared to 42% who say he's doing well. Well, are the voters finally listening to Donald Trump?
I don't want to cause any problems, but your mayor of London is grossly incompetent, a bad person, and a horrible representative for your country. You know that. That's why you're smiling and laughing, and it's true. But you know that. The mayor of London is a horror show.
Well, that's what Donald Trump has said, not just then in the Oval Office, but time and indeed time again. Let's speak to Jonathan Liss, the journalist and broadcaster, on this, because I think it's unlikely that Donald Trump has influenced the average Londoner on this question, but there is certainly a weird gulf in terms of success and perception with a Manchester mayor like Andy Burnham, sky-high approval ratings, and Sadiq Khan in London, they're on the floor.
I think that it's been easier for Andy Burnham to establish himself over a much smaller city like Manchester and to come away with some really clear successes like the bus deregulation or the bus regulation rather that you saw in Manchester. And Andy Burnham, who I think is a more successful politician than Sadiq Khan, although I think Sadiq Khan has many strengths, is that Burnham has been able to harness a kind of ideology from that, which he thinks he can transpose onto the UK writ large, the so-called Manchesterism idea, which is a lot easier for someone like Manchester, because obviously if you are away from London, it's easier to showcase a kind of devolution, whereas London has so often been lumped in with England and become a kind of stand-in for England, and indeed the UK, that it's a lot harder to kind of separate London as a distinct identity. Although, as we know, London absolutely has a distinct identity. It's a liberal oasis in England. People like me are far more home politically in London than someone like you, Tom, if I may say, particularly with views on something like Brexit.
I'm not sure, Jonathan. I'm not sure London, of course, is not just central London. It voted for Boris Johnson as mayor not once but twice.
Yeah, and Johnson it's a good example. Johnson was elected. Johnson, obviously, who's a shapeshifter who believes in nothing apart from his own advancement, managed to become London mayor when he was masquerading as someone who actually cared about liberalism, who cared about progressive causes. If the Johnson, the Brexiter, or Johnson, the dyed-in-the-wool kind of reactionary that he subsequently became, had attempted to become London mayor, of course he would have been kicked out by the Londoners. He became profoundly right-wing nationalist, Tom. I think that's a controversial view. And London
do we live under the same government, Jonathan Liss? Migration shot up to the highest it has ever been. Public spending on the NHS shot up to the highest it has ever been. On every single issue that I care to think of, the country shifted left compared to a Conservative Prime Minister such as David Cameron.
There is absolutely no way that Boris Johnson was more to the left of David Cameron, I would say. David Cameron, who was the architect of austerity.
Which one reduced public spending?
David Cameron was the architect. Boris Johnson's tax rises were not in any way progressive. The increase in national insurance was not a progressive tax rise.
So you're trying to argue that Boris Johnson raising taxes is somehow right-wing?
No, I didn't say that. I said that it wasn't progressive. And Boris Johnson is not a progressive person. But Boris, as I said, the fundamental point is Boris Johnson doesn't believe in anything. So it's pointless to argue about whether Boris Johnson is right-wing or left-wing. Boris Johnson is Boris Johnson-wing. Well, my point is, while he was masquerading as someone who was actually a soft liberal, that's why London has elected him. London is a left-wing progressive city. And that's why people like Jeremy Corbyn have done well in London. That's why Keir Starmer, his previous sort of iteration,
has done well in Islington. He might do less well in some other parts of the capital. But Jonathan,
London
just before we let you go, Sadiq Khan has, I know, you know, we all know lots of people in the Labour Party, and Sadiq Khan doesn't light up a room in the Labour Party. There are people who Labour loyalists love, and Sadiq Khan has never been seen, despite his accolades, despite his knighthood, despite his now peerage, this guy keeps failing upwards.
The thing with Sadiq Khan is he's a very charismatic guy. He's a very committed guy. He's a good politician. I think Andy Burnham's better, but Andy Burnham's better than most people in this country, politically. But what Khan is he's kind of a little bit scrappy. He's a little bit obnoxious. He rubs a lot of people up the wrong way. And also, I have to say it, as someone who is from London, who's lived in London his entire life, and he obviously lives and breathes politics, Khan is not a major presence in my life. I can go easily for a couple of months without hearing Sadiq Khan's name. And I think part of that actually is an issue with how the London mayoralty works, because we don't have a New York-style system where the London mayor actually has real power. Zoran Mamdani has a power.
The London mayor has enormous
really happy that
power, Jonathan Liz.
I'm
the
really
London
happy that
plan determines what every
Mamdani
single building in London can be like. And Sadiq Khan has banned air conditioning effectively in the capital because he says it leads to a heat island effect and warms up the streets too much and isn't good for the planet. Sadiq Khan has also instituted a dual aspect mandate for every building. So any new flat must have windows on either side. That's completely destroyed the prospect for profitable development. House building is on the floor in London, hugely because of the regulations that he has put on house building and indeed the affordable housing mandates, where if you're going to build I don't know, a tower block in London, half of it has to be affordable. You're not going to make a profit on that, and no one is building.
Well, I think that is taking, observing the fact that affordable housing is beyond the reach, or housing is beyond the reach of so many young people. And we know in this country, because we still have a centralised...
made it impossible to build any houses.
We have a centralised system in this country, as you know very well. So people from around, it's not like in Germany where you can have a very successful career in sort of 6 or 7 different cities.
Planning
in
is
Britain,
the control of the mayor. The mayor sets the London plan.
The point I'm saying is
I agree with you on lots of other aspects of infrastructure spending. He doesn't have the power that, for example, a mayor in a French township might. But on the issue of building houses, this guy can approve literally anything he wants. He blocked the Sphere. The Las Vegas Sphere is amazing. They were going to have one in London. Sadiq Khan blocked it. I mean, on every single issue, he's as nimby as they come.
That was a shame. That was a shame. I'm not here to sort of champion everything that Sadiq Khan's done. I would have liked that Sphere as well. I think that we should have a lot more interesting, innovative architecture and projects and all this kind of stuff. What I am saying is that affordability is a huge issue for Londoners and people who come to London and make London their home, because London is the centre of the UK's political, social, sort of professional fabric. If you want to sort of make it in so many fields in life, sadly, you have to come to London. I say that as a Londoner, whereas in other countries, that's not the case. So obviously, affordability is a huge issue. The other thing is that council house building is, I think, at its highest rate since the 1970s in London. And I think that, in terms of the power that he does have over house building, he's actually done a pretty good job. It's not perfect, of course.
I live in a borough where almost 40% of all homes are social homes, subsidised by the government. That is true of many, many central London boroughs. That doesn't make housing cheaper. It just means people are on wait lists for housing. What makes housing cheaper is allowing people to build homes. The market rate should be lower. Council housing is such a red herring in this discussion.
Well, no, it's not a red herring at all. Someone like Tom, someone like you, sort of died in the wool thatch, right? Obviously, is pleased with the fact that Thatcher instituted the right to buy scheme. But the problem with the right to buy scheme was that the councils never replenished the housing stock that was sold off to people.
We have amongst the highest level of social housing in the OECD. Look it up. It's definitive fact. Jonathan, I'm afraid we've run to the end of the conversation. I know I could talk to you for ages on this, but thank you indeed for joining us. Still ahead on The Late Show Live. Scotland's First Minister John Swinney has defended spending an enormous amount of money on fancy flights to America. Is he right? Did he break his own rules? Also, America's in a lot of debt. We'll get to it all here on The Late Show Live only on GB News.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Another day of heavy downpours for some of us. Not quite as many as we saw through yesterday, a bit more sunshine around, but for all of us it will stay on the cooler side of things with a northerly wind pushing in from the north, and that will bring that fresher feel particularly to more eastern coasts throughout today. We could see some quite heavy downpours pushing across parts of northeastern England for a time this morning and across parts of South Wales as well as the southwest into this afternoon. But for many of us it's going to be a relatively dry day, plenty of sunny spells, not too much in the way of long-lived sunshine, but it will still feel quite warm in the sunshine despite temperatures being a little bit below average for the time of year. Across Scotland, it's going to be quite a dry evening. The risk of showers pushes further south away from Scotland into this evening, so plenty of sunshine to end the day. Still that fresh feel, though, across the very far north, and it will remain cloudier across more northern coasts into the evening as well. The shower risk increases as we head towards parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, parts of Wales, southeastern England, also in with the chance of a shower through Friday evening. Some of these do bring a risk of some quite torrential downpours through Friday evening. But then it does turn drier as we head towards the weekend. A clear night to come for many of us through Friday night into Saturday. Still a chance of a shower overnight across some coastal areas, particularly Irish Sea coast, but for many inland areas it's going to be a cool night. Temperatures widely falling down into single figures, the low single figures rurally to start the day, so quite a fresh start. But it is going to be a sunny start to the weekend. Plenty of dry weather on the cards this weekend and a bit more sunshine than we've had through the past few days. But temperatures will remain on the cooler side of things, quite widely below average in the high teens, possibly low 20s at best. So a bit of a difference to what we've become accustomed to. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis, in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Live from Washington, D.C., this is GB News with the stories shaping both Britain and America. Well, breaking tonight, the FBI has thwarted an alleged bomb plot on New York's Capitol, with chilling details emerging about what prosecutors call the alleged terrorist's dream target, one Donald J. Trump.
Stating she would come back to attack the White House and the president, but only after she bombed the state capitol.
Elsewhere, first-class First Minister, or at least business, John Swinney defends spending more than £45,000 of public money flying himself and two aides business class to the World Cup. Is that money well spent, and does it break his own rules? Elsewhere, debt, baby debt. Yes, America now owes $4 trillion. Can Trump get a grip? What on earth happened to Doge? And has the United States finally maxed out its own credit card? Plus, George Floyd reckoning. 6 years after a death that changed America and arguably the world, Elon Musk now says that Derek Chauvin, the police officer who knelt on Floyd's neck, should never have been convicted of murder. Well, I'm Tom Harwood, and this is The Late Show Live. Well, a very warm welcome to The Late Show Live. Thank you for your company this evening or this morning or wherever you are in the world. Well, I wanted to get to some of your thoughts quickly now. Jimmy has written in to say, Khan, I agree with the Donald. And indeed, Juliet says, how about Meghan for London Mayor? Nice thread there between some of the stories that we have been talking about. Jackie says, why does Sadiq keep winning? And I think many, many Londoners keep asking themselves exactly the same question. Glynis says, Tom, I for one will never see the old Harry again. I would firmly lock that stable door only to keep them out. Well, do keep those comments coming in. We'll get to some more of them a little bit later in the show. Now to my panel. Joining me this evening in Washington is my panel of Democratic strategist Mally Smith, political commentator Stephen Kent, and in London it's the political commentators Andy Twelves and Charlie Rowley. Thank you all for joining us this evening, or indeed this morning. Now, a GB News alert this hour. Scotland's First Minister John Swinney has defended spending more than £45,000 of public money on business-class flights for himself and two senior aides during Scotland's World Cup campaign. Well, the First Minister flew to Boston for Scotland's opening game before travelling on for trade talks, with his ticket and that of his private secretary costing almost £18,000 each. I don't know about you, I've never spent £18,000 on a flight, but the Scottish Government's own travel rules say that business class should normally only be used for flights lasting more than 10 hours. Now, I can personally tell you that flying from Britain to the east coast of the United States does not take 10 hours. No, direct flights from Edinburgh to Boston take around 7. So, did Swinney break his own rules? Well, he says that officials tried to minimise costs. Did they? While Justice Secretary Neil Gray argued ministers need to be able to arrive fresh and begin work immediately. Let's talk with my panel. The Democratic strategist Mally Smith, the political commentator Stephen Kent, and in London, Andy Twelves and Charlie Rowley. Andy, this seems fairly strange. I mean, governments are not famed for their cost control, but for a few flights, I mean, running into the tens of thousands.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely mad that it was 18 grand a ticket. I think the principle of the First Minister of a country and 2 of his staff members getting on a business class flight for their country's first time in the World Cup in quite a while, and then further trade talks, I don't think many people would disagree with that principle, to be honest. I think, you know, he's the leader of a country. He should be allowed to get business class if he wants. I think the fact it costs 45 grand for those 3 is absolutely mad. I don't know what they were flying or what they were, you know, it must have been some kind of in-flight hospitality or something, you know, put a couple of bottles. No, I'm kidding. Please don't sue me, John Swinney. I would never suggest that. I just think that's absolutely mad. I think the principle is fine of it, and I think, you know, a lot of people, it was especially, you know, even people on my side of the political spectrum towards the end of Rishi Sunak's time in Number 10 were complaining that he was using helicopters and planes for government business. I think it's just a silly route to go down, and I think, you know what, he probably should be allowed to fly business class to Boston.
Now, Charlie, of course, you were an advisor in the last Conservative government, and yes, Rishi Sunak was criticised a lot for his private flights. But remembering a little bit earlier, further back, David Cameron famously flew on some budget airlines with his family, showing that he was a man of a people at a time of fiscal constraint. And remarkably, researching this story, I found that 25 years ago today, to the day, Tony Blair had himself photographed flying on his family holiday on a budget airline as well. I mean, ultimately, has John Swinney missed the mark here?
Oh, totally. And you're right. You know, when I was advising with Michael Gove, when I was travelling with Theresa May, you know, I wouldn't be slumming it in business class with them. I can assure you, I was the one carrying the bags at the back of the plane. So, you know, you don't need to take your private secretary or political team really into business class. I don't accept actually that John Swinney needs to be in business class. He's not the Prime Minister, he's the First Minister of Scotland. I don't want to belittle that role, but you know, trade deals that take place between countries, the UK and the US, will be done by the UK government, not by Scotland independently. So he wanted to go and watch the football. And I like football, so you know, I'm not going to criticise him for that. And I'm sure the trade deal talks or the trade talks were probably just an add-on to the package to justify the trip. But we can forgive him for that because we love football. But you're right. People can travel. Economy, you know, the 10-hour flight distance, which would justify business class, wasn't met. So he's not living up to his own standards, or the standards of the rules that are written by the Scottish government. So I think taxpayers in Scotland and across the UK will be slightly outraged about this huge bill, and they should be rightly so.
Now, Mally, as an American, you must be thinking that we are mad talking about this story. To an American, I mean, I suppose, I don't know how much it costs for Donald Trump to move a mile, let alone across an ocean. But put yourself into the mindset of a British taxpayer for a second, if you will. We're now looking at Tony Blair, back in 25 years ago today, flying Ryanair on his family holiday. I mean, sometimes politicians have to do this to feel like they're men of the people.
Well, this is cheap for what President Trump has done. President Trump got a jet gifted by the Qataris that is going to cost $200 million for us to renovate, that will then go to him personally once his presidency is over. So $45K is nothing. But here's the thing. He shouldn't travel on first class. In the Biden administration, I worked for the Labor Secretary and helped plan the Labor Secretary's travel. And the Labor Secretary, or cabinet secretaries in the U.S., is kind of the equivalent of what John Swinney would be. And she traveled coach. She traveled coach to the West Coast.
An American cabinet position flew in sort of the cheap seats.
Yeah, I think most cabinet secretaries fly commercial and they do not fly first class. It's actually prohibited for them to fly first class unless it's an extreme, unless there's extreme reasons, which I would assume maybe those were the only tickets available. So no, this shouldn't happen, but President Trump has really changed the game with his private Qatari jets. So maybe John Swinney should talk to him and see if he can find some other Arab Emirates who can give him some free planes.
This is a perennial controversy in public service of the flights, the inappropriate helicopter rides. I believe it was the last CIA director director was taking flights from Virginia near an airport right near my home, right over to Langley. And
for a Brit, what on earth does that mean?
It means instead of driving an hour through traffic, taking a freaking plane to work. That is what the last CIA director was doing, to the tunes of hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's very expensive to take these private jet rides. But maybe I'm losing the war of attrition, with government corruption and misspending. I just look at this and I go, kind of like Andy, whatever. It's going to the World Cup. Going to the World Cup, you're going to fly business class. You're going to go schmooze and represent Scotland. You know what? You go, girl. That's
okay. Fine, Stephen. Then why have the stupid rule that says 10-hour flights? I mean, I could understand saying, okay, don't do it for 5-hour flights, right? But I mean, a 10-hour flight. I mean, that would mean. I mean, but there are very few places. I mean, Britain. If you ever look at a map, it's wonderful. We are at the centre of the world.
Yeah,
maybe because we drew the maps.
Like Australia, Australia, that would maybe be the place.
Yeah, Los Angeles, perhaps.
Yeah, well, you know what? It sounds like a rule ripe for changing. It's just, I look at that and I go, okay, you know what? This is fine. It's going to blow over for this person. He just needs to keep his head down. Not a big deal.
But Andy, ultimately, the SNP have been populists in power for what, more than 18 years in Scotland now, and they continue getting into power because they pass rules like this that people believe that they will follow, and they want to be, of the people, and then John Swinney just sort of flies in the face of that, if you'll pardon the pun.
Yeah, I think the SNP have had basically an unchallenged rule for the last 20 years, apart from a couple of years ago when Anna Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, looked like he was going to have a chance, but then the election came too late for him. The Scottish Tories had a couple of good innings, about 10 years ago. I think there is, I think Stephen Flynn, oh my goodness, John Swinney, the First Minister of Scotland, is facing a bit of internal pressure as well from the SNP.
Stephen Flynn has just given up his seat in Parliament to go up to the Scottish Parliament, and everyone's thinking, is this guy the next First Minister? Anyway, that's a completely different conversation.
That's exactly it. I think, Stephen Flynn is kind of tapping his watch and going, when am I going to get it? He was a very successful Westminster leader for the SNP in the House of Commons. I think now he's, returned to Holyrood, will be expecting, John Swinney to step down in the next couple of years. So, a couple more stories like this, and it might come a bit sooner than Stephen Flynn thinks.
Yeah, I mean, the extraordinary thing is, when I first saw this story, I thought, who's been leaking this? Who's been briefing this? Who's trying to manoeuvre their way into getting their residency at Bute House? And yet this was just publicly available information on the regularly published accounts of the Scottish Government. I mean, do you think, Charlie, that they didn't think that this would be a scandal?
Do you know what? I think they probably thought it's one that they could take a hit on, and I think they should probably do is just be upfront about it and say, you know what, it was a historic event for Scotland. They'd not been in the World Cup for how many years. The First Minister was going to go and celebrate the team, put Scotland on the map, and make no apology for it and say, because we love football. This whole charade afterwards of saying, oh, but no, there were trade talks and they must arrive fresh for those trade talks, which I think actually happened after the match. So, it's a load of old nonsense. Yeah. It's cobblers. Do you think people in Glasgow, or the city centres, on a weekend are going to be sitting there thinking, oh, well done, our First Minister. He was there for the trade talks. No, he went to the football, and good on him, but just front it up, admit it.
What trade talks, given, Charlie, as we know, the King was here in Washington, D.C., 6 months ago, and it was the King who got the Scotch whisky tariffs removed, which then John Swinney tried to claim credit for, despite it happening, despite Donald Trump literally saying he did this for King Charles as part of the whole big state visit apparatus. Well, ultimately, Mally, this is one of these stories that I think sometimes sticks in the back of people's minds, because there are stories that seem trivial, but there was a big one at the start of the Labour government in Britain, where it turned out that Keir Starmer had all of his suits paid for by a big donor, had his glasses paid for by the same donor, and lots of other members of the cabinet had exactly the same thing. And these are not wealthy people. These are people who have quite a lot more money than the average Brit, and it really does cut in the neck for some people when you see these people living a completely different life. It feels like they're going against either the rules as written or as people think the rules should be.
Well, you know, we can laugh because we know 45K isn't going to radically change the debt outlook for the UK. But with that being said, you look at this and you have voters in the UK, voters in the US who see this and they're like, I'm doing my best to get by. And you have these folks who are supposed to be making policy on my behalf living a life of luxury, especially when it comes at the expense of the taxpayer. I looked up, 45K is solidly above average, the average median income for Scotland, which UK, that's sad. You guys have got to work on your median income. But second, you look at that, what they did on a single trip, that could have employed someone for an entire year for an above average median or above the median pay in Scotland. So it's tangible because I think people can just really see that and be like, what are we doing?
And sometimes I think we in Britain kid ourselves that the year is 2007 and that the GDP per capita of our country is exactly the same as the United States as it was in 2007. However, since that year, Britain has barely grown. Our productivity has been flat and the United States has grown precipitously under presidents of both parties, I might add. But ultimately, now the United States is a third ahead on GDP per capita compared to Britain. That's what happens if we don't relentlessly go for growth. Suddenly, I think a lot of people watching this will think 45K is a very good salary. To an American, that seems insane. And I want to bring Stephen in on this for a second because I was watching some of Zoran Mandami's election campaign material. And he was saying, you know, for working class New Yorkers getting by on just 100K a year. Now, to a Brit, that's absolutely insane. But then to people who live in Manhattan, that's like not a big salary. I mean, the gulf in understanding here is enormous.
Yeah, everything is relative, isn't it? And we had this big blow up between your fine country and our state of Mississippi, which is known to be one of the poorest places on average in the United States, but it is quite on par with average household wealth in the UK. You know, everything is relative. You know, a $100,000 salary in New York City, yeah, it's not going to take you very far. You know, there was a story just the other day about one of the Democratic Socialists of America's top organizers, Gustavo something. He lives in a $1.5 million townhouse gifted to him by his parents who came to this country from Peru with nothing, and now he advocates for socialism in the United States while living in this ritzy condo with 8 bedrooms. But I was looking at that house and it was quite small and it was valued at $1.5 million. I was going, you know what, $1.5 million in the middle of New York City, it's probably not even that great because everything there is so expensive.
You see why he's a socialist now. Gotta get better.
Yeah, hold on. Let's at this point bring in Reem Ibrahim from Reason magazine. What do you make of this story?
Hi, Tom. Great to see you. I mean, I think it's absolutely outrageous. We're currently in a situation in which the Scottish Government take in less money in taxes than they spend. And so, of course, it means that English taxpayers are subsidising Scottish public services, Scottish public spending. You know, everyone goes on about how brilliant it is that Scotland has, quote unquote, free university education. Well, that is only possible because the English subsidise it. And we are now in a situation in which we are squabbling over what seems to me not to be an enormous amount of money, which is about £45,000 on flights. But of course, one of your panellists mentioned this already. 3 business class tickets cost more than the typical Scottish worker earns in an entire year. So we are talking about some of the most extraordinarily poor people in the country. We're talking about England as a whole, the United Kingdom as a whole. Scotland has some of the poorest people in the entirety of the United Kingdom. And yet we've got somebody like John Swinney who thinks it's acceptable to break his own government's rules around public spending. And you know what I find really outrageous about this is we talk about it as though, well, it's the World Cup, it's acceptable, it's fine, you know, who wouldn't have done that? But this is not John Swinney's money. This is the Scottish public's money. This is the British public's money. There is no such thing as government money. It is the public's money. It is taxpayer money. And this is money that is being wasted. And I think it's pretty outrageous. Of course, as you said at the top of the programme, this is, you know, it breaks the rules that the Scottish Government has themselves. We are talking about the fact that it, you know, a 7-hour flight over to Boston. We also know the Scots drank Boston dry, which was brilliant. But again, every other person that came from Scotland...
I'm glad you raised that.
Yes. Every other person from Scotland had to pay for their own flights, and John Swinney, because he has made people vote for him and forced the Scottish public and the British public to pay for his salary, gets to go for free. So it's outrageous. The entire thing about trade talks, I mean, the whiskey tariffs were already decided before John Swinney had even stepped on the plane, and so I don't think that has anything to do with it at all. It is outrageous. It's really funny that some of the only stories we hear from the Scottish government are about how much they waste and how terrible they're doing.
Can I put to you the case for John Swinney? Because I always think that perhaps Britain doesn't present itself in the best way on the world stage. I looked at that picture of Tony Blair flying, Ryanair, and I cringed a little bit inside. When David Cameron flew his kids out on a budget airline, I mean, everyone knows the guy's a multi-millionaire. Why is he sort of LARPing as if he's sort of one of everyone else? And ultimately, before Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, there wasn't even a dedicated plane for the Prime Minister. They used RAF planes. They didn't have a nice paint job. I genuinely think one of the things that Boris Johnson did that will have one of the most lasting impacts for Britain on the world stage is that now, after his Prime Ministership, when a British Prime Minister flies to a summit, a NATO meeting, a G7, a G20, the UN, whatever it is, they fly on a plane in British livery. They're lined up next to the German plane and the Canadian plane and the American plane, and it looks like a proper country, because ultimately, for the longest time, we didn't. So we're a bit squeamish about flying in the United Kingdom. I mean, I think the German government has 7 planes, private planes, that it divvies out to its government ministers. We only have 1 or 2. We have 2, I think, for the Prime Minister, and that's about it. I mean, ultimately, we're quite squeamish about this.
Yeah, I mean, there are 2 aspects to this, right? There is absolutely a cultural difference between Brits and Americans, and it's something that I noticed when I moved here, Tom. It's this idea that actually Americans are not scared of wealth. You know, they are very happy to show that they have wealth. They are very happy to be pro-profit, pro-money. It's very often that, somebody might say, oh, I'm thinking of starting this business, and somebody will say, oh, I know somebody that's doing the same thing, I'll help you out. Whereas in the UK, I mean, this is, again, a cultural thing. It's almost as though you have to be ashamed of your success, and you have to be ashamed of doing well in life or being ashamed of having money. It's sort of seen as rather taboo. But that's a cultural difference, and we do see that in our politics as well. But I think that the crucial point here is that this is about taxpayer money. And you mentioned the American government. Well, President Trump doesn't even take his salary as the president, right? He's been able to build up his wealth. He's been able to use that money. And I'll tell you what, the Scottish Prime Minister, the Scottish First Minister can spend as much money as he wants of his own. But when it comes to taxpayer money that is being spent, when it comes to the public having to work extraordinarily hard in order to pay for the highest tax burden in British history, I tell you what, Scotland, the United Kingdom, all of our politicians can do all of those things when Britain is a rich country. America is a rich country. Public spending as a proportion of GDP is like 30%. In the UK, it's almost 50%. When the government decides that it actually cares about growth and wants to be serious about growth, then we can talk about private jets. But until then, stick to Ryanair.
Reem Ibrahim, thank you so much for joining us. An absolute force of nature, as always. Appreciate your time. Reporter for Reason Magazine out here in DC, of course. Now, let me know your thoughts by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Is this a scandal, or are we all getting ahead of ourselves? Now, still ahead on The Late Show Live. 6 years after the death of George Floyd, Elon Musk says Derek Chauvin, the police officer who knelt on his neck, must never be convicted of murder. What do you make of that? Or indeed some other words in a similar order. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. Moving on to our main news this evening. Donald Trump has moved to calm turmoil in US bond markets after America's national debt has hit a record $40 trillion. I'm going to repeat that. America's national debt has hit $40 trillion. Well, Well, the US Treasury will double its planned purchases of long-dated government bonds to $4 billion after borrowing costs surged to levels not seen for decades. They are not quite as high as borrowing costs in the United Kingdom, but the United States is still suffering from the same global disease that many countries are indeed, and they're wrangling with it. Well, 30-year Treasury yields hit a two-decade high, 5.33% amid concerns over inflation, much as the UK, mounting government debt, much as the UK, and the economic impact of the war in Iran, much as in the UK. Well, the intervention brought yields back down, but analysts warn it does little to address the underlying problem of America continuing to borrow vastly more money than it is taking in tax. Well, with me is my panel, Democratic strategist Mally Smith, political commentator Stephen Kent, and in London, political commentators Andy Twelves and Charlie Rowley. Mally, we're going to start with you on this one. I know you've been itching to talk about it all show. I mean, I can't even quantify what $40 trillion might even look like, how to even put it in some sort of context. It's just it's a mind-bogglingly large amount of money.
It's $117 per $17,000 per household, isn't it, Mally? Like that's how you can kind of break it down.
Well, it's not great. And President Trump liked to claim, and Elon Musk, that Doge was going to be this transformational tool to get our debt and deficit down, but it fell woefully short. Musk said we'd save trillions. Doge officially claimed we saved $215 billion, but independent analysts have shown us that we've saved probably $1 to $7 billion. But the reason Doge wasn't effective is the simple fact that Doge was mostly looking at discretionary programs. That's spending on everything that's not entitlement programs like healthcare and defense spending. And you could get rid of every cent of discretionary spending and the U.S. debt would still go up. Because a lot of people like to joke, we are a military that runs an insurance company, right? Those are the two things that are driving up the debt. And then specifically, a few things really hurt recently, which is the Iran war increased inflation expectations. Before the Iran war, the 10-year Treasury bond was 4%. Since then, it's gone to 5%. You might say, oh, that's only 1%. In the bond markets, that is a huge jump. Then Trump did a tax cut for billionaires that added $4.7 trillion to the debt. And then lastly, his tariffs were ruled unconstitutional, so they had to be refunded, and that was about $200 billion out the door. And the worst part about that, and then I'll shut up, is that the tariffs were a tax on middle-class consumers, but the refunds, the Trump administration sent them to big businesses, not to the middle-class consumers who paid them. So it added to our debt and just gave to our richest corporations that didn't need it.
Well, Mally, you're kind of tiptoeing around, of course, the big issue that Republicans and Democrats are always beating each other up about, which is whether or not we have a spending problem related primarily to entitlements and individual payments made to everyday Americans. Right now, if you look at our composition of federal spending as a percent of GDP, it is without a doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt, it is a entitlements issue. Medicare, Medicaid, healthcare spending, Social Security. If you look just at defense spending, we are not even as a percent of GDP spending on as much on defense as we were in the 1990s when Bill Clinton was president. I think that Democrats and people on the left are just very eager to talk about, the Defense Department and the war posture of the United States, but we all know that this is about our individual checks that we send to Americans every single day that we cannot actually afford to do. And I want to spread the criticism here. The Republican Party used to be good at fighting this. They used to believe that this was a problem that needed to be addressed. Donald Trump represents a huge break from that. He is all about preserving Social Security as it is, to keep the checks flowing. He doesn't want to do anything to disrupt the gerontocracy of this country, which largely relies on the entitlement state to fund their lifestyles, whether or not they actually need checks from the government.
Stephen, is that not just the malaise of any government? I mean, not since Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House of Representatives has there been a serious path to a surplus in this country. And ultimately, what we have seen is Democrat and Republican, and then Democrat, and it goes on, are responding to what the voters are demanding.
Yes, yes.
I want to raise something that FDR allegedly once said when a lobby group went to meet him in the Oval Office and spent a long, long time trying to convince him to back some sort of project. And he told this group, yes, you've convinced me. And they asked him, will you do it? He said, no. You don't need to convince me, you need to convince the country. Then I'll do it. And ultimately, the country is so far away from the median position of, I don't know, policy experts, for want of a better term, on whether or not this spending needs to be controlled.
You know, Americans have some of the highest individual household debt in the world when it comes to our own credit card usage and lack of individual savings. I don't think Americans sit around every day and really freak out about the national debt hitting this high of a number. We don't know what it means. We just think the gravy train is going to keep running, that austerity is a thing that happens to Greece, but it will never happen here. No politician will address this until we reach crisis
And yet,
point.
Mally, yeah. I remember very, very clearly watching, because I've watched it a million times, the 1992 town hall debate.
Okay, you're a nerd. I love that. That's the nerd thing to say.
With Bill Clinton and Ross Perot and George H.W. Bush. And one of the biggest points of debate there was the national debt, because Ross Perot burst onto the political scene demanding that politicians talk about the national debt. And the moment when Bill Clinton perhaps won that election was when someone in the audience said, how does the national debt affect me? And Clinton walked over to her, knelt by her and said, you know what, when a business closes in my small state, I know those people by name. I mean, it wasn't answering the question at all, but he connected with that woman. And ultimately, that was the last time that anyone cared about the national debt. Does it take a Republican presidency to be spending too much for then Democrats to actually talk about it and then something gets done? Because I think that's basically what happened in 92.
Well, I think it's going to take a divided government, because neither party is going to want their top legacy when a new president is inaugurated to raise your taxes and cut your spending. Like, that's not super popular. If it's a Democrat, you're going to want to expand healthcare. If you're a Republican, it's going to be some sort of tax cuts. Those are the things you're going to want to sell. So it's going to have to take both parties to buy in. On the Clinton note, it is really funny that there was economists, specifically Alan Greenspan, was so worried that we were going to actually have surpluses that were so large that it was going to negatively impact the economy because it was going to be drawing too much money out of the private market, which is insane to look at now. That would be a great problem to have if we just had super large surpluses, but we didn't know that we were going to have a great recession, a couple of foreign interventions, tax cuts, expanded programs. You couldn't foresee that, and now we're in a much different place.
Well, let's bring in our London panel now, because Andy, we've been focusing on the United States of America, but as I said in the introduction, these are not American-specific issues. All of these issues, the high interest rates, the enormous debt, our deficits that continue to roll on, these are all going to be really, really prescient for Andy Burnham's first budget.
Yeah, I think it's not even just Andy Burnham's first budget. I think with the budgets of, for the next 5, 6, 7 years, these aren't short-term things that you can fix with an autumn statement or a spring budget. Do you know what I mean? These are things that are going to take years and years and years of economic intervention and economic strategy to change. I think, the war in Iran, I suppose, is something that both, American viewers and British viewers are both feeling. And I think on the American note, it is really, really difficult for, the midterms that the Americans have got coming up later this year, and then in turn the Republican primaries for the next presidential election. It'll be really difficult for Marco Rubio or JD Vance or whomever is going to become the Trump successor to go, yeah, I know we ran on a platform of no wars in the Middle East, forget the neocon age of George W. Bush, but yeah, I know we did do that big war in Iran, which has absolutely tanked the world economy. I think that's going to be a really, really, really difficult sell for a lot of Republicans who got on board with the America First program, who got on board with MAGA as the whole point of not being neoconservatives.
And Charlie, ultimately, Britain has one more problem than the United States of America, because despite this enormous debt, the high interest rates, everything else that America is suffering with, America is still growing economically and growing much, much more strongly than European countries. Britain doesn't have that luxury.
Tom, you're absolutely right. You've hit the nail on the head, because, at times you can run up a debt when times are good. But we have to go back to after the 2007-8 crash, when it was Cameron and Osborne that were focusing on the deficit. That wasn't even the debt. You know, they were saying we've got to get the deficit down, we've got to get public spending under control, we've got to make sure that we're not spending over and above in terms of outgoings compared to what we've got in. So public spending cuts have to come in order to get us market confidence and to maybe be able to borrow and invest at the same time as making sure that the markets aren't going loop-de-loop on the UK, for a very technical term there. But we haven't seen that since. Now we've got a situation where the debt is over 3 trillion in the UK. I tried to do the figures for what that means for UK households. I'm glad someone did the math out there that said it was about 117,000 per US household. But that means the debt is growing. Our deficit is getting larger because we've got the highest tax burden and more public spending and more borrowing coming down the tracks that, to Andy's point, Andy Burnham and John Healey have really got to get a grasp on because we haven't seen the growth that is needed in order to bring in those tax receipts. So we're going to have more tax, more spend, more borrowing, more debt in the UK, which I don't think bodes well.
Well, on that happy note, Charlie, Andy, and indeed Mally and Stephen, thanks indeed for talking through this council of despair, I think, that particular segment became. Now, let's jump out of that council of despair and look at some of the other news that's happening here in the United States. Tulsi Gabbard, the former director of national intelligence, who left her position earlier this year after her husband was diagnosed with bone cancer, well, she's revealed that he is progressing well. In a post on social media, she said doctors were confident they had been able to cut out all of the cancerous bone and tissue. Good news there. Now the FBI has stopped former US Congressman Eric Swalwell in an airport and seized his electronic devices, also while raiding his home in Washington, D.C. this weekend. All as part of a federal investigation into sexual misconduct allegations against him. Well, Swalwell dropped out of the California governor's race, where he was in the lead, and gave up his seat in the House of Representatives. He's also under criminal investigation by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and Los Angeles Sheriff's Department for accusations of rape and sexual assault. Swalwell has denied the allegations and said that, and his attorney has called them fabricated. And finally, still ahead on The Late Show Live. Yes, 6 years after the death of George Floyd, Elon Musk says Derek Chauvin, the police officer involved, should never have been convicted of murder. What do you make of it? Well, this is The Late Show Live only on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Another day of heavy downpours for some of us, not quite as many as we saw through yesterday, a bit more sunshine around, but for all of us it will stay on the cooler side of things with a northerly wind pushing in from the north, and that will bring that fresher feel particularly to more eastern coasts throughout today. We could see some quite heavy downpours pushing across parts of northeastern England for a time this morning and across parts of South Wales as well as the southwest into this afternoon. But for many of us it's going to be a relatively dry day, plenty of sunny spells, not too much in the way of long-lived sunshine, but it will still feel quite warm in the sunshine despite temperatures being a little bit below average for the time of year. Across Scotland, it's going to be quite a dry evening. The risk of showers pushes further south away from Scotland into this evening, so plenty of sunshine to end the day. Still that fresh feel, though, across the very far north, and it will remain cloudier across more northern coasts into the evening as well. The shower risk increases as we head towards parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, parts of Wales, southeastern England, also in with a chance of a shower through Friday evening. Some of these do bring a risk of some quite torrential downpours through Friday evening. But then it does turn drier as we head towards the weekend. A clear night to come for many of us through Friday night into Saturday. Still a chance of a shower overnight across some coastal areas, particularly Irish Sea coast, but for many inland areas it's going to be a cool night. Temperatures widely falling down into single figures, the low single figures rurally to start the day, so quite a fresh start. But it is going to be a sunny start to the weekend. Plenty of dry weather on the cards this weekend and a bit more sunshine than we've had through the past few days. But temperatures will remain on the cooler side of things, quite widely below average in the high teens, possibly low 20s at best. So a bit of a difference to what we've become accustomed to. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells
with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, Elon Musk, have you heard of him? Yes, he calls for a lot of things, doesn't he? Well, he's called for former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin to be freed, claiming that he was wrongly convicted over the death of George Floyd. Writing on Twitter, Musk said Chauvin was unjustly convicted of murder and insisted that, whatever else he may be, he was not a murderer. Well, Chauvin was convicted in 2021 of murder and manslaughter after kneeling on Mr. Floyd for about 9.5 minutes and is serving concurrent state and federal prison sentences. His latest legal challenge was filed this week, seeking to have his state conviction overturned. Some people think that the conviction happening at the fraught political time that it did might have been unduly, whatever the opposite of lenient is. Harsh. Well, with me is my panel, Democratic strategist Mally Smith, political commentator Stephen Kent in London, Andy Twelves and Charlie Rowley. Charlie, what do you make of this Oh, no, we're going to Washington first. Stephen, what do you make of this intervention from Musk? I mean, he says a lot of things, but does this one actually carry some weight?
Yeah, whenever you talk about the royals, this is our version of the royals, is our oligarchs and our multi-billionaires. Like, this is what matters. Trillionaires, yeah, we finally did it, fam. I'm surprised that this is the first time that he has said this. Like, the idea that Elon Musk has tweeted Derek Chauvin is innocent or doesn't deserve to be in prison for, 22 years, I think, total. I'm surprised this would be the first time. Is he right? Is this worth talking about? Sure. I mean, it is obviously the case that after the George Floyd death, that getting a fair trial, a state trial in the state of Minnesota, was not going to be feasible. It was fast-tracked to the system without a grand jury opportunity. You could revisit this. That's how the legal system works. It is still also the case that George Floyd died of excited delirium. He said, I cannot breathe before he was on the ground. You are not allowed to say this on broadcast media when it happened. And we need to give this guy an opportunity to continue to make his case. And if his sentence gets reduced, that's called justice.
Mally,
that's how it works.
I really don't care what Elon Musk thinks about Derek Chauvin.
Why not?
He has been very successful at creating companies, but like many tech oligarchs, that makes him think he is the master of the universe and he knows all. He is not a doctor. He was not there when this trial happened. He knows not much more than any of us else know. He also has other stupid opinions, like he has amplified content saying that women shouldn't have the right to vote. So
Mally, this wasn't a secret trial and secret medical examination. We do know things about
I'm saying he doesn't know any more than we know.
Yeah.
And the trial found him guilty. And the man has legal options that are available to anyone in the U.S. He can appeal and see if it gets thrown out, but he is still in jail and he has not been successful in his appeals. We'll see if that happens. But I don't care what Elon Musk says.
Do you think that there's a point here, ignoring Elon Musk for a second, that the particular political atmosphere of that summer of 2020 and a little bit of 2021 was, looking back on it, so very different from the political atmosphere that we live in today that people said a lot of things and a lot of things, well, the behaviour was in many ways slightly out of the ordinary?
I mean, there was certainly, as AOC joked, it was peak woke. But with that being said, if we're talking about the actual trial, Derek Chauvin had a defense attorney. They got to help in the jury selection, and in jury selection you get to kick out jurors for no reason at all, a certain amount, and then you get to help pick the jury pool just like the prosecutors do. And he lost in trial.
He put in a guilty plea too.
So
it's worth noting that he did that as well.
So my point is, I don't care what Elon Musk thinks. I don't know why we're revisiting this other than a guy who has trillions of dollars has decided to make it his issue he would like to talk about, and now we have to talk about it.
Well, there is also...
And Derek Chauvin can use the legal tools that everyone else has available to them.
And I think that is also relevant this week because that appeals process has begun. Let's bring now in the political strategist Thomas Corbett-Dillon for more on this. Thomas, why do you think, or what do you think on this issue?
Well, I think you'll struggle to find anyone in the United States that, first of all, thinks that he's a murderer, and second, or more importantly, that he received a fair trial. I think that's the main question here. His trial was not fair. It was impossible to give a fair trial in that situation.
And is that the main claim here, that there should be a second trial? That's a different claim to saying that he is innocent.
Well, that's exactly the point. So this is what he went to the Supreme Court with. You know, he took it to the top. They refused to hear it. But his main claims, for example, the jury were not sequestered. So remember, during, as they're calling it now, peak woke, these guys were going home to their communities where the riots were happening and seeing the news. Of course, you couldn't miss it at the time. They should have been sequestered. That was his #1 claim. And, you know, and the fact that this didn't happen was kind of shocking. Any other scenario, they would do it. When the people are living among riots, but then going in, I don't think you can expect. And of course, last year, he was attacked. He was stabbed 22 times in his jail. He's now been moved to a much nicer jail in Texas, which is the other problem, of course, is that they almost did him a favor by giving him federal charges at the same time, because he's now in a much nicer federal facility. A lot of people are asking for President Trump to pardon him, but what that will mean is the federal charges will go away. He'll go straight back to state jail, which is not where he wants to be. That's the real dangerous place. So he's in a tough situation.
That's a really, really interesting point. I'm glad you raised that, because some people have been calling for that, and that would be seemingly deeply counterproductive from their own ends. But ultimately, are we being too technical here on the rights and wrongs of the trial? Because ultimately, there was a video that the world saw. There's a reason why what we are now calling peak woke and the riots and everything else, why this was what sparked it. Because looking at that video, many moderately minded people looked at it and saw something wrong.
Right, but I think, you know, a lot of people now are claiming if this were to happen today, it certainly wouldn't be anything like what it was. This also ties into the defunding of USAID by the president, because a lot of these organizations, the SPLC, they were funding many of these riots that took place across America. So this whole thing was really blown up by, you know, actors that were being funded by the government. There's a lot of funding in this. You know, these riots, they weren't organic. They were being pushed. They were being placed out there.
Thomas, what do you mean that the government was funding riots?
It wouldn't happen. What's that, sorry?
What do you mean when you say the government was funding riots? Is there, what do you mean there?
Well, the USAID was obviously funneling money to various left-wing organizations. I mean, we see it today. We've seen many cases now that, for example, lots of white supremacy. I think it was the leader of, it wasn't SPLC, but of another organization. She was married to a white supremacist guy. The whole thing was totally corrupt. The president has shut it down. And all of a sudden, doesn't seem to be any riots this summer. First summer in a while, we haven't had any riots in the United States.
Ah, I see. So it's the USAID money that goes to some of these organisations that then donated to Black Lives Matter, and that kicks off. I think there is some disagreement that there is a direct connection, because there were some of these organisations that support Black Lives Matter that weren't violent, and then there were some people who chanted those slogans who were. It's an incredibly confused picture.
It is, but this goes back to the point. If this happened today, if what Derek Chauvin did happened today, he would certainly not be given a murder charge. Is there anyone that can say this guy murdered that man? You know, murder has to be preemptive. He went out and killed this guy? No. It is, you know, at most you could say it's police brutality. But this guy's in jail for 22 years. It is not fair. I think, you know, I mean, he's got no chance. The Minnesota state governor is very left-wing. Of course, Tim Walz, who ran with Kamala Harris, there's no chance he's getting a pardon from anyone in that state.
Well, Thomas Corbett, Dylan, thanks indeed for joining us. Appreciate your thoughts on this one. Quickly, let's go to my London commentators, Andy Twelves and Charlie Rowley. Andy, what do you make of that?
I suppose, yeah, he wouldn't be convicted or found guilty for murder if it was today, because, you know, you can get away with anything in Trump's America. You know, ICE have executed 2 citizens, and none of them have been brought up on murder charges. So I suppose he would probably get away with it. I think, you know, I don't really know why Elon Musk has made this his flame of the week. I think I really agree. I don't really care what Elon Musk thinks. He's not a doctor. He's not a lawyer. He's, you know, a tech oligarch. I genuinely don't care. I think, you know, he tweets some absolute nonsense, and I just hope that, you know, he doesn't rile anyone up unnecessarily because of this.
Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, look, can't claim to be any kind of a legal expert in the US, state by state, but 22 years for a murder. When the piece that I've just got in front of me says that drug and heart disease were a contributing factor to Floyd's death, even though it wasn't the direct cause. So, in the heat of the moment where a trial seemingly is being rushed, where there is a very seemingly harsh sentence, then you would obviously seek to appeal that, and questions as we've just been talking about probably should be asked, and answers need to be found.
Two quick things to correct Thomas Corbett Dillon. First off, there's no factual evidence at all that USAID money went to Black Lives Matter protests. If he has that, he should present it. And then second, if this was happening and that the government was funding all of these riots, that would have happened while President Trump was president. So maybe they should look into this huge conspiracy if President Trump was doing that.
OK, important points. Well, thank you all to my panel. Now, we've got quick time to look at the front page of the Daily Mail and indeed some other newspapers, but the Mail is reporting on the return of the prodigal prince. And here is that page. Sussex's security. God, she sells seashells on the seashore, isn't it? Sussex's security could cost taxpayers £5 million a year. Think about how many flights John Swinney could have with that. Well, earlier I took to the streets of Washington, D.C. to see what Americans made of this news.
Well, it might be more peaceful now. Maybe she'll feel more respected and welcomed. I wish them the best. Yeah, I definitely do. I'm going to look forward to looking for that.
I couldn't care less, to be honest.
I don't even know who that is. Who is Prince Harry?
And Meghan Markle?
Who is that?
She's in Suits.
I don't even know who that is, Mo. I'm not gonna lie, I don't even know who that is. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
I don't care. I don't care. Good. I wish them luck.
They can do what they want to do. If they feel like they want to go home, let them go home.
I wish them the best. I mean, honestly, I hope they had their space and time to heal from everything that they were going through. And, I honestly, I think people should just give them their privacy and let them live their lives.
It was nice having you, and now you can go home again.
Do you think they'll be missed in America?
Oh, well, I don't think many people saw them on the street or down at the coffee shop. So maybe they're neighbors in, where was it? Santa Barbara somewhere?
Montecito.
Montecito. Oh, Oprah, yeah. Oprah will probably miss them. But for me, I'm not going to miss you really that much.
Well, it's funny that woman there said that she never saw them on the street, because I also spoke to someone who literally showed me on his phone, he took a picture, he saw Prince Harry in Arlington literally yesterday. I mean, you couldn't make it up. We'll try and get that video for you online as well. Well, with me quickly is my panel, Democratic strategist Mally Smith, political commentator Stephen Kent in London, political commentators Andy Twelves and Charlie Rowley. I think it was interesting that the people of Washington, D.C., Mally, are many reflecting what a lot of people on this panel have been saying this evening.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Stephen and I might have a lot of disagreements on some issues, but we have our finger on the pulse of American sentiment when it comes to the royals, because it's pretty much what we said. Again, I wish them a great life. I hope they can make some more money and find peace and happiness, whether it's in the UK or the US. But hopefully when they get there, they can calm down so GB News can stop asking me about them.
And also, are they here in Virginia? I thought the royals were in California or something.
Yeah, they live in LA, I think.
Yeah, they live in Montecito.
And they should go out to Front Royal, Virginia, where the king actually visited. One of the last areas of the British frontier. They still fly British flags. Just about an hour and a half away from here in Washington, D.C. They might be welcome there.
I mean, it is remarkable, actually, just to go off on a quick tangent. I mean, the British history in these original 13 colonies, Virginia specifically, I mean, you've got a mace in the Virginian House of Representatives, I guess it is. I mean, just like in the House of Commons in the United Kingdom, a golden mace is carried forward, and it's got a crown on the end of it. I mean, it's almost like the revolution never happened. Well, let's turn to London now, just to wrap this story up, because Charlie, please inject some royalism into this conversation.
Yes, I'm all for the royal family, and I think, look, after a completely failed career, obviously, they're moving to the US, and I just hope that if they come back, which they're obviously going to, whether they are, the big issue will be about security and the cost of their security. I think if they're not working royals, then they should fund that themselves. I think it was perfectly legitimate to strip his security in the first place because he wasn't even in the country, and if he's visiting, he could pay for it for himself, for him and his family. Look, I hope he reconciles with his dad. I hope, we still love Harry, but I think a time of quiet reflection, of just fading into the background, would do them and the UK a world of good. And William.
Andy I'm
12's
sure William
moving.
would be
grateful for that as well.
Sorry. Okay, Andy 12's now. We've just had the positive royalism bits. We need some grumpy republicanism.
I just think it's absolutely mad that they get more negative front pages than Prince Andrew, or former Prince Andrew. I just think it's mad. Everyone needs to get a grip. Kids are starving, people are dying. We need to move on from it.
Well, on that note, thank you all for joining me this evening, and indeed, thank you at home for spending your night with The Late Show Live. A big thank you to my panel once more. I'll see everyone, well, not this particular panel, but actually I won't be here tomorrow night. You'll be lucky things. It's back with Ben Leo. Yes, he's back at the tiller. So that's tomorrow, midnight in the United Kingdom, 7 p.m. Eastern Time in the United States.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Another day of heavy downpours for some of us. Not quite as many as we saw through yesterday, a bit more sunshine around, but for all of us it will stay on the cooler side of things with a northerly wind pushing in from the north, and that will bring that fresher feel particularly to more eastern coasts throughout today. We could see some quite heavy downpours pushing across parts of northeastern England for a time this morning and across parts of South Wales as well as the southwest into this afternoon. But for many of us it's going to be a relatively dry day, plenty of sunny spells, not too much in the way of long-lived sunshine, but it will still feel quite warm in the sunshine despite temperatures being a little bit below average for the time of year. Across Scotland, it's going to be quite a dry evening. The risk of showers pushes further south away from Scotland into this evening, so plenty of sunshine to end the day. Still that fresh feel, though, across the very far north, and it will remain cloudier across more northern coasts into the evening as well. The shower risk increases as we head towards parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, parts of Wales, southeastern England, also in with a chance of a shower through Friday evening. Some of these do bring a risk of some quite torrential downpours through Friday evening. But then it does turn drier as we head towards the weekend. A clear night to come for many of us through Friday night into Saturday. Still a chance of a shower overnight across some coastal areas, particularly Irish Sea coast, but for many inland areas it's going to be a cool night. Temperatures widely falling down into single figures, the low single figures rurally to start the day, so quite a fresh start. But it is going to be a sunny start to the weekend. Plenty of dry weather on the cards this weekend and a bit more sunshine than we've had through the past few days. But temperatures will remain on the cooler side of things, quite widely below average in the high teens, possibly low 20s at best. So a bit of a difference to what we've become accustomed to. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Five hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racist tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me. Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
We think we can allow.
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
it's 6 a.m. on the 14th of March, and we are on the Freedom Flight.
Harry and Meghan are back.
Beyonce just texted.
Shut up.
Just checking in.
Just checking in, just casual.
I still can't can't believe she knows who I am.
It's going to be absolutely insufferable, isn't it? In other news,
it's made explicitly clear what the UK law is and what the societal norm